Have you ever noticed that sometimes the people who can buy almost anything in the world end up losing the one thing money can never replace? A billionaire can purchase private jets, luxury yachts, and mansions with more bedrooms than he'll ever use. He can make a phone call and move millions of dollars before finishing his morning coffee. But if he spends years teaching the person who loves him that they can no longer trust him, no amount of money will ever buy that trust back. Today's story begins with exactly that kind of irony. A man worth hundreds of millions of dollars didn't lose everything because he made a bad investment. He lost everything because he believed his wife would never discover one signature that erased the only place she had ever truly called home. Before we begin, welcome back to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson. If you're new here, this channel is where we share powerful American love stories inspired by real-life emotions, difficult choices, and the life lessons hidden inside everyday relationships. If stories about love, trust, second chances, and personal growth speak to you, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, let me ask you something. If the person you loved most secretly gave away your home to protect someone else, would you fight for the house, fight for the marriage, or simply walk away? Take a moment and think about your answer, because what Olivia Carter Bennett chose surprised everyone. She didn't yell. She didn't throw things. She didn't chase revenge. And somehow, that quiet decision became the reason her husband's carefully built world came crashing down. It happened on a cold Thursday afternoon. Olivia Carter Bennett stepped out of a rideshare after spending nearly 3 weeks caring for her dying mother in another state. She was exhausted, her shoulders ached from sleepless nights in hospital chairs, and all she wanted was to unlock the front door, make a cup of tea, and finally breathe. Instead, she froze. A moving truck sat in her driveway. 2 strangers carried framed artwork through the front door. Another man stood on a ladder removing the house numbers she had carefully chosen years earlier. At first, she thought she had the wrong address. She checked the mailbox, the street, the neighboring houses. Everything was exactly as she remembered. Except, it no longer looked like her home. A woman wearing a construction vest approached with a clipboard. "Can I help you?" Olivia forced a polite smile. "I think there's been some mistake. I live here." The woman looked confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This property changed ownership 3 days ago." 3 days ago. The words didn't make sense. Olivia laughed softly, the kind of nervous laugh people make when reality feels impossible. "There must be some paperwork mix-up. My husband owns this house." The woman hesitated before quietly replying, "The paperwork says he did." Those 2 words landed harder than any insult ever could. He did, not he does, not he and you. Just, he did. Olivia's heartbeat quickened as she reached for her phone. Her husband answered on the second ring. "Adrian?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I'm standing outside our house." Silence, long enough for her stomach to tighten. "There are strangers inside." More silence. "Adrian." Another pause. Then came the sentence that would divide her life into 2 parts, everything before it and everything after. "I was going to tell you." No explanation, no denial, no desperate attempt to say it was all a misunderstanding. Just 7 quiet words. "I was going to tell you." In that moment, Olivia realized something heartbreaking. People rarely destroy relationships in one explosive act. Most destroy them one quiet decision at a time. One secret, one excuse, one compromise, until the person standing beside them no longer feels chosen. What Adrian Bennett didn't understand was that he hadn't simply signed away a piece of property. He had signed away the one promise his wife believed he would never break. And before this story is over, you'll discover why the decision he thought would save someone else's life became the very reason his own fell apart. Because sometimes, the most expensive mistake a wealthy person can make is believing the people who truly love them will always stay, no matter what they do. So settle in, because this isn't just a story about a billionaire, a mansion, or a betrayal. It's a story about the quiet choices that shape our lives, the weight of broken trust, and the difficult truth that every decision, no matter how small, carries consequences that money can never erase. Let's begin. The first home Olivia Carter ever remembered wasn't really a home at all. It was a 2-story foster house on the east side of Cleveland, Ohio, where 6 children shared 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a dining table that always seemed just a little too small. The house wasn't cruel, and no one went hungry, but it was never meant to be permanent. Children came, children left. Their names were crossed off a whiteboard near the front door, replaced by new ones before anyone had time to say goodbye. By the time Olivia turned 10, she had already lived in 4 different foster homes. Every move taught her the same painful lesson: never get too comfortable. Never unpack every box. She became an expert at keeping her life inside cardboard containers. While other children covered bedroom walls with posters and family photos, Olivia left her walls bare. Decorating felt dangerous. It meant believing she might still be there next month. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, one of her foster mothers, noticed it first. One Saturday morning, she found Olivia sitting on the floor of her room, reading beside 3 unopened boxes. "You've been here almost 6 months," Mrs. Hayes said gently. "Why haven't you unpacked?" Olivia looked up from her book. "What if I have to leave again?" Mrs. Hayes didn't answer immediately. Instead, she sat beside the little girl and rested a comforting hand on one of the boxes. "You know," she said softly, "a house is where people sleep." Olivia frowned. "But a home," Mrs. Hayes smiled, "is where people choose to love you." Those words stayed with Olivia for the rest of her life. Years later, she would realize they were both beautifully true and painfully incomplete. Because sometimes, people choose to love you, until they don't. School became Olivia's escape. Numbers made sense. Blueprints made sense. Buildings made sense. Unlike people, buildings stood where they were built. Foundations mattered. Every beam had a purpose. Every wall supported another. There was comfort in knowing that strong structures didn't simply disappear overnight. At 14, she discovered architecture during a school career fair. An elderly architect unfolded blueprints across a folding table and explained how every home began as an idea before becoming a place where families laughed, argued, celebrated birthdays, and created memories. Olivia stared at the drawings for nearly 20 minutes. Not because she admired the design, because she admired what the design represented. Stability, safety, belonging. That afternoon, she borrowed every architecture book the school library owned. Within a year, teachers noticed something unusual. She wasn't simply talented. She was gifted. By high school graduation, Olivia had earned scholarships from multiple universities. She accepted one at The Ohio State University, where she worked evenings in a campus cafe, studied until midnight, and graduated near the top of her class with a degree in architecture. For the first time in her life, she held a key that no one could take away. It belonged to a tiny studio apartment overlooking a noisy intersection. The walls were thin. The kitchen barely fit one person. The bathroom door didn't close properly. But every month, when she paid the rent herself, she smiled. Because no social worker could tell her to pack. No judge could decide where she belonged. For the first time, she was home. Her career began quietly. Fresh out of college, Olivia joined a respected architectural firm in Chicago, where she spent long hours designing affordable housing projects instead of glamorous skyscrapers. Some co-workers questioned her decision. "With your talent," one senior architect told her, "you could be designing luxury condos." Olivia simply smiled. Luxury isn't what people need most. What do they need? A place that feels safe. Her answer surprised people, but every drawing she completed reflected the same belief. Homes weren't measured by price. They were measured by peace. Over the next 7 years, Olivia earned a reputation for designing neighborhoods that felt welcoming rather than impressive. Her projects included parks where children could play safely, front porches that encouraged neighbors to talk, and shared green spaces that brought communities together. Clients admired her talent. Colleagues respected her work ethic. Yet when people asked about her personal life, she always gave the same polite smile. There isn't much to tell. The truth was more complicated. She had dated. She had even fallen in love once during college. But the relationship ended when her boyfriend accepted a job across the country and admitted he wasn't ready to build a future together. It hurt. Not because she lost him. Because it reminded her how quickly people could leave. So Olivia did what she had always done. She poured her energy into work. If she couldn't always trust people to stay, she could at least build places that would. At 31, Olivia received an invitation to speak at a charity fundraiser focused on revitalizing underserved neighborhoods in Chicago. She almost declined. Public speaking had never been her favorite thing. But her boss insisted. "The city needs to hear voices like yours." The ballroom was filled with developers, investors, business owners, and local officials. Olivia stood at the podium with a stack of notes she barely glanced at. Instead, she spoke from the heart. She talked about children growing up without stable housing, about elderly couples forced to leave neighborhoods they loved, about how architecture wasn't just about beautiful buildings, it was about creating places where people felt they belonged. The room fell silent. When she finished, the applause lasted much longer than she expected. As guests mingled afterward, a man in a tailored navy suit approached with 2 glasses of sparkling water. "I figured everyone else would offer champagne," he said with an easy smile. "You looked like someone who actually wanted water." Olivia laughed for the first time that evening. "You guessed correctly." He handed her the glass. I'm Adrian Bennett. She recognized the name immediately. At 36, Adrian was already one of Chicago's fastest-rising entrepreneurs. His technology and logistics company had grown from a small startup into a business attracting national attention. Business magazines praised his vision, while financial news outlets often called him one of the city's most promising self-made executives. "I've heard of you," Olivia admitted. "I hope only the good things." "So far?" He chuckled. "And I've heard of you." She looked surprised. The architect who keeps turning down luxury projects because she'd rather design neighborhoods people can actually afford. She tilted her head. "People talk about that. The right people do." Instead of asking about profits or prestige, Adrian spent the next 30 minutes asking Olivia why she cared so deeply about creating homes for families she would never meet. No one had ever asked her that before. Not with genuine curiosity. By the end of the evening, they weren't discussing architecture or business anymore. They were talking about childhood dreams, favorite books, and the places that shaped them. When the event ended, Adrian hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I know this might sound forward," he said, "but would you let me buy you dinner sometime? Not because you're an architect, not because I'm a businessman, just because I enjoy talking to you." Olivia looked at him carefully. She had learned long ago not to confuse charm with character. But there was something different about Adrian. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was trying to understand her. She smiled. "I think I'd like that." Neither of them realized that one simple conversation over 2 glasses of sparkling water would become the foundation of a love story that would one day be tested by pride, betrayal, and a single signature. The first dinner between Olivia Carter and Adrian Bennett was supposed to last an hour. Instead, the restaurant staff stacked chairs around them while they were still talking. Neither of them noticed. Adrian wasn't like the men Olivia had dated before. He didn't spend the evening talking about how much money he made or dropping the names of influential people he knew. Whenever the conversation drifted toward his growing technology company, he quickly redirected it back to her. "So," he asked as the waiter refilled their glasses, "what's the first building you ever fell in love with?" Olivia smiled. "That's an unusual question. I've been told I ask a lot of those." She thought for a moment. "It wasn't a famous building." "No?" She shook her head. "It was a small brick library in one of my foster neighborhoods. It wasn't beautiful by most people's standards, but it was the first place that always welcomed me back. No matter how many times I moved, the librarian remembered my name." Adrian rested his elbows on the table. "So, it wasn't the building?" "No. It was how it made you feel." Olivia nodded. "Exactly." Adrian smiled quietly. "I think that's true about people too." It was such a simple observation, yet it lingered in Olivia's mind long after the evening ended. Their relationship didn't move quickly. Neither of them wanted it to. Over the next several months, they learned each other's routines instead of trying to impress one another. Adrian discovered that Olivia loved quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and jazz music playing softly in the background. Olivia learned that Adrian never missed calling his mother every Wednesday evening, no matter how busy he was. He learned she always carried a sketchbook. She learned he still drove the same old pickup truck he'd owned before becoming wealthy because, as he often joked, "It reminds me that success is rented every day." When winter arrived, they took long walks along Chicago's Riverwalk, bundled in heavy coats, sharing roasted chestnuts from a street vendor. One evening, Adrian stopped in the middle of the bridge overlooking the water. "Can I ask you something?" "You usually do." "What scares you the most?" Olivia looked out across the river before answering. "Losing the feeling that I belong somewhere." Adrian didn't laugh. He didn't tell her she was overthinking. Instead, he reached for her hand. "You'll always belong with me." She wanted to believe him, more than anything. As Adrian's company expanded, so did the demands on his time. He worked long hours negotiating contracts, meeting investors, and traveling across the country. But no matter how busy he became, he protected one tradition. Friday nights belonged to Olivia. Sometimes they cooked together. Sometimes they ordered takeout and watched old movies. Sometimes they simply sat on the balcony talking about nothing important. Those evenings became sacred. Years later, Olivia would realize that relationships aren't strengthened by grand vacations or expensive gifts. They're strengthened by ordinary moments that quietly become irreplaceable. 2 years into their relationship, Adrian invited Olivia to visit the warehouse where his company had first begun. It was nothing like the sleek headquarters the business now occupied. The old building smelled faintly of sawdust and machine oil. Several folding tables still stood where employees had once assembled orders by hand. Adrian ran his fingers along a scratched wooden workbench. "This is where it all started." Olivia smiled. "It feels smaller than I imagined." He laughed. It was. They wandered through the empty space until Adrian stopped near a faded whiteboard covered with old business goals. Some had been crossed out. Others remained unfinished. I almost quit, Adrian admitted. She looked at him. When? More times than I'd like to admit. Why didn't you? He looked at her. Because every time I thought about giving up, you'd ask me one question. I did? He nodded. What's the next small step? Olivia laughed softly. I say that to everyone. I know. He smiled. But I believed it when you said it. It was the first time she truly understood that she hadn't simply supported Adrian emotionally. She had quietly influenced the way he approached life and business. Neither of them realized how important that truth would become years later. When Adrian proposed, there were no television cameras, no orchestra, and no elaborate surprise. It happened in the neighborhood park, where they often walked on Saturday mornings. Children laughed on the playground. Dogs chased tennis balls across the grass. A food truck sold hot chocolate nearby. It was ordinary, which made it perfect. Adrian reached into his coat pocket. Olivia. She immediately recognized the nervousness in his voice. He knelt on one knee. I've spent years building a company. He smiled. But the life I want most isn't something I can build alone. His voice trembled slightly. I don't promise we'll never face hard times. I don't promise we'll always agree. But I promise you'll never have to wonder whether you're facing them alone. He opened the ring box. Will you marry me? Tears filled Olivia's eyes before she could answer. Yes. The applause from strangers nearby made them both laugh. It was one of the happiest days of their lives. Their marriage wasn't perfect. No marriage is. They argued about work schedules, about Adrian checking emails during dinner, about Olivia taking on too many community projects without resting. But they had one simple rule. Never go to bed without trying to understand each other. Not necessarily agreeing. Understanding. That rule carried them through many difficult seasons. As Adrian's company grew into a billion-dollar enterprise, reporters often described him as a visionary entrepreneur. What they rarely mentioned was the woman who quietly stood behind many of his biggest decisions. Olivia wasn't just his wife. She read investment proposals when he felt overwhelmed. She noticed flaws in expansion plans. She introduced him to community leaders who later became valuable partners. Her architectural understanding of neighborhoods helped Adrian choose locations for several successful developments. Whenever people praised him, Adrian usually replied, I've had good advice. He never explained where much of that advice came from. At the time, Olivia didn't mind. She wasn't interested in public recognition. She believed they were building one future together. 5 years into their marriage, Adrian surprised Olivia with a weekend drive outside the city. He refused to tell her where they were going. After nearly an hour, they turned into a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood filled with elegant homes. Finally, Adrian parked in front of a beautiful 2-story stone house with wide front steps, white shutters, and a wraparound porch. The landscaping was simple but elegant. A large oak tree shaded the front yard. Olivia admired it. It's beautiful. It is. She smiled. I wonder who lives there. Adrian reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small brass key in her hand. She looked down at it, confused. What is this? He smiled. The front door key. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? He pointed toward the house. It belongs to you. For several long seconds, Olivia couldn't speak. She stared at the home, then at the key, then back at Adrian. No. He nodded. Yes. You bought this? I did. She shook her head in disbelief. Adrian. He gently took both of her hands. When you told me about growing up afraid to unpack your boxes. His voice softened. I promised myself that one day I'd give you a place no one could ever take away. Tears streamed down Olivia's face. She wrapped her arms around him without saying a word. The house wasn't simply expensive. It represented every dream she thought she'd left behind as a frightened little girl moving from one foster home to another. For the first time in her life, she believed she was truly home. Neither of them noticed the black luxury sedan parked quietly across the street. Inside sat a woman watching the couple through the windshield. She lowered her sunglasses and stared at Adrian with growing desperation. Then she picked up her phone. A single message appeared on his screen. Vanessa Reed. I have nowhere else to turn, please. I need to see you tonight. It's urgent. Adrian looked down at the notification. His smile faded. Olivia noticed the change immediately. Everything okay? He locked his phone and forced another smile. Yeah. But for the first time since they had met, he lied. Before we continue to Chapter 2, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were in Olivia's shoes, after everything she had been through, would that beautiful house make you finally believe you were safe? Or would a part of you still be afraid that it could all disappear one day? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read as many of them as I can, and your perspective might inspire someone else. If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Because in Chapter 2, one desperate phone call, one secret meeting, and one signature will set in motion a betrayal that no amount of money can ever undo. Adrian Bennett barely touched his dinner that evening. Across the table, Olivia chatted happily about a community housing project she hoped to take on the following spring. She had spread sketches across the dining table, her eyes lighting up every time she explained how a redesigned neighborhood could bring people together. "I know the city council is worried about the budget," she said, pointing to one of the drawings, "but if we build smaller parks between the homes instead of one large park, families will actually use the space more often." Adrian smiled. "It looks incredible." She looked up. "You didn't hear a word I just said, did you?" He blinked. "What?" Olivia laughed softly. "I knew it. I'm sorry. You've been somewhere else all evening. I'm just tired." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You've been saying that a lot lately." He forced another smile. "I'll be fine." Olivia believed him. Because trust doesn't disappear overnight. It disappears when honesty quietly leaves the room. Nearly an hour later, Adrian stood outside an upscale hotel overlooking Lake Michigan. Rain tapped softly against the windshield of his car as he stared at the entrance. He should leave. Every instinct told him to drive home. Instead, he turned off the engine. 5 minutes later, Vanessa Reed stepped through the revolving doors. She looked nothing like the confident woman who usually appeared at charity galas and business events. Her expensive coat was wrinkled. Her mascara had run. Dark circles framed her eyes. When she climbed into the passenger seat, neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, Adrian broke the silence. "You said it was urgent." Vanessa nodded. "It is." She opened her designer handbag and removed several folded envelopes. Collection notices, legal documents, bank statements. She placed them on the dashboard one by one. Adrian scanned the paperwork. His expression hardened. $300,000? She lowered her eyes. "I know. How does someone owe $300,000? It didn't happen all at once." "What happened?" Vanessa took a long breath. "My younger brother opened a restaurant 3 years ago." Adrian listened quietly. "He asked me to sign a business loan because his credit wasn't strong enough. And the restaurant survived less than a year." She looked out the rain-covered window. "After that, everything snowballed. Medical bills after her father suffered a stroke. Credit cards used to keep up loan payments, interest piling on interest. Then private lenders who promised quick solutions. They weren't really solutions," she whispered. "They never are." Adrian studied her face. "You should have told me. I was ashamed. You should have gone to your family. They've already lost enough." She swallowed hard. "Yesterday they came to my apartment." His jaw tightened. "Who?" "The lenders." She looked directly at him. "They said if I don't pay within 2 weeks." Her voice broke. "They'll make sure I regret it." For the first time that evening, Adrian saw genuine fear, not manipulation. The waitress delivered coffee neither of them drank. Vanessa quietly wiped away a tear. "I know I don't deserve your help." Adrian leaned back. "You're right." She nodded. "I know. You made reckless decisions." "I did. You kept this from everyone." "I was embarrassed." "You expect me to write a check and make it disappear?" She looked down. "No." "Then why am I here?" Vanessa hesitated before answering. "Because you're the only person I thought might at least listen." The words lingered between them. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. Months earlier, their relationship had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. It hadn't begun with passion. It had begun with long business trips, late-night conversations, and shared frustrations. He and Olivia had grown distant, buried beneath demanding careers and constant travel. Instead of addressing that distance with honesty, Adrian found temporary comfort in someone who expected less from him. It was selfish. He knew that. And now, his selfishness had created responsibilities he never wanted. "I can't do this," Adrian finally said. Vanessa looked up. "I can't keep fixing your mistakes." "I understand. I've already betrayed someone who never deserved it." She nodded slowly. "I'm not asking you to choose me." "Good. I'm asking you to help me survive." Silence returned. Outside, rain continued falling across the city. Adrian rubbed his temples. He remembered Olivia standing in front of their new home, only hours earlier. The tears in her eyes. The way she'd whispered, "I've never felt this safe." The memory hit him harder than he expected. He stood. I'll see what I can do. Vanessa didn't smile. She simply whispered, "Thank you." The following morning, Adrian arrived early at his downtown office. Waiting inside was Marcus Ellis, his attorney for nearly 15 years. Marcus wasn't just a lawyer. He was the man Adrian trusted with every major legal decision the company had ever made. "You sounded concerned," Marcus said. "I have a problem." "Business?" "No." Marcus sat. "Worse?" Adrian nodded. He explained everything. Not every detail of the affair, only what Marcus needed to know. When he finished, the attorney leaned back silently. Finally, he spoke. $300,000 isn't impossible for you. No. So what's stopping you? Adrian looked toward the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. If I wire that amount directly. Marcus understood immediately. It creates a record. Exactly. A record Olivia could eventually discover. Adrian nodded. I've already made enough mistakes. Marcus folded his hands. There are other options. Adrian turned. What kind of options? The attorney hesitated. I don't like them. Tell me anyway. Marcus opened a legal folder. There is one possibility. Adrian listened carefully. The house is currently held through one of your family investment trusts. Yes. It can legally be transferred as collateral in a debt settlement. Adrian frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying... Marcus paused. The property could temporarily satisfy the debt. Oh, temporarily? The agreement could include an option allowing you to repurchase it before permanent ownership changes. Adrian stared at him. Would Olivia know? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Legally? Marcus. Not immediately. Silence filled the office. The city buzzed outside. Inside, only the ticking of a wall clock could be heard. Marcus closed the folder. I need to say something. Adrian looked at him. This may be legal, but it isn't right. Adrian remained silent. Marcus continued. Every bad decision I've watched successful people make started the same way. They convinced themselves it was only temporary. They believed they would fix everything before anyone got hurt. He slid the folder back across the desk. Think carefully, because if you sign those papers... He paused. You won't just be risking property. You'll be gambling with trust. After Marcus left, Adrian sat alone in the quiet office. The folder remained unopened for several minutes. Finally, he reached for it. Inside lay a single page requiring only one signature. One signature, one decision. One lie disguised as a solution. Adrian picked up his pen, then stopped. His phone vibrated. A text message from Olivia appeared on the screen. Olivia, good luck with your meeting today. Love you. Don't forget dinner with Mom on Friday. Adrian stared at the message, then at the documents. His hand tightened around the pen. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Adrian read Olivia's message 3 times. Good luck with your meeting today. Love you. Don't forget dinner with Mom on Friday. The small red heart at the end felt heavier than any legal document on his desk. He set his phone down, then pushed the folder away. No, he whispered to himself. This isn't happening. For the next hour, he buried himself in work. Quarterly reports, acquisition proposals, emails from investors, anything to silence the argument inside his own mind. But every few minutes, his eyes drifted back to the folder. It sat there, quietly, waiting. Problems rarely announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they simply wait for the moment we're tired enough to make the wrong decision. That afternoon, Adrian visited one of the company's distribution centers on the outskirts of Chicago. Normally, walking through the busy warehouse helped him think. Employees greeted him. Forklifts moved pallets across polished concrete floors. Managers discussed expansion plans. Everything appeared normal. Yet, nothing felt normal. As he passed one of the loading docks, he noticed an older employee struggling to lift a heavy crate. Adrian immediately walked over. Let me help. The man smiled. Thanks, Mr. Bennett. Together, they carried the crate onto a pallet. The employee wiped sweat from his forehead. My father used to tell me something, he said. Oh? It's easier to carry a heavy box than a guilty conscience. Adrian forced a smile. I've never heard that one. The man laughed. He wasn't an educated man. But he was usually right. For reasons Adrian couldn't explain, those words stayed with him long after he left the warehouse. That evening, Olivia was waiting on the back porch when he arrived home. The summer breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass through the yard. She handed him a glass of iced tea. You look exhausted. I've had a long day. She studied his face carefully. Are you sure that's all it is? What do you mean? I don't know. She shrugged gently. It just feels like you're carrying something you don't want to talk about. Adrian looked away. The truth sat only inches from his lips. He could tell her, right now, everything, the affair, Vanessa, the debt, the pressure. She would be devastated. She might even leave, but at least the next decision would be honest. Instead, he heard himself say, "It's just business." Olivia nodded. "I wish you'd let me help." "You already do." "No." She smiled sadly. "I mean, really help." He kissed her forehead. "I've got it under control." It was the second lie, in less than 24 hours. The frightening part wasn't that he lied. It was that each lie became a little easier. Later that night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He quietly left the bedroom and walked downstairs. The house was silent. Moonlight spilled across the hardwood floors. As he wandered into the living room, he noticed something resting on the fireplace mantel, a framed photograph. It had been taken the day he gave Olivia the house. She stood on the front porch, holding the brass key with tears in her eyes. Behind her, the oak tree stretched toward the sky. He remembered exactly what he had promised. "You'll never have to wonder where you belong again." He closed his eyes. What am I doing? For a brief moment, he decided. Tomorrow, he would end everything. He would confess, face the consequences, accept whatever came next. His phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. "They came back tonight." A second message arrived almost immediately. "Please, I'm scared." Then a third. "I don't know what else to do." Adrian lowered himself onto the couch. Every solution seemed to hurt someone. Help Vanessa. Betray Olivia. Protect Olivia. Leave Vanessa to face dangerous lenders alone. He had spent years believing there was always a way to solve impossible problems. Now he was discovering the painful truth. Some problems exist because of the choices we already made. The following morning, Adrian walked back into Marcus Ellis's office. His attorney looked up immediately. "You've made a decision." Adrian nodded. Marcus sighed. "I was hoping you hadn't." Adrian remained standing. "I'll buy the property back before anyone notices." Marcus didn't respond. "I have more than enough money." Still silence. "This is temporary." Marcus slowly removed his glasses. "That's exactly what every client tells me before a temporary lie becomes a permanent disaster." Adrian rubbed his forehead. "I don't have another option." Marcus looked him directly in the eyes. "You had another option." Adrian frowned. "What?" "The moment this situation began. You could have told your wife the truth." The room became quiet. Adrian knew Marcus was right. He simply wasn't brave enough to admit it. The documents were prepared that afternoon. Several representatives from the private lending company arrived with their attorneys. Everything moved quickly, professionally, legally. No raised voices. No dramatic confrontation. Just signatures. Dates. Initials. Witnesses. The kind of quiet paperwork that changes, lives forever. Marcus placed the final document in front of Adrian. "This is your last opportunity." Adrian looked up. "If you walk away now." Marcus said quietly, "The deal ends." Adrian stared at the signature line. His hand trembled. He remembered Olivia unpacking every box in the house because, for the first time since childhood, she believed she would never have to move again. He remembered her laughing in the kitchen as they painted one of the guest rooms together. He remembered her planting roses beneath the front windows because she wanted the home to feel welcoming. He remembered promising, "No one will ever take this away from you." His chest tightened. For one long moment, he almost stood up. Almost. Then fear whispered louder than love. "You can fix this later. No one has to know. It's only temporary." Adrian lowered the pen. His signature crossed the page. One smooth motion. 5 seconds. That was all it took. The room remained silent. There was no thunder outside. No dramatic music. No feeling that history had just changed. Only the quiet scratching of ink drying on paper. Marcus slowly closed the folder. Without anger. Without judgment. He simply said, "I hope you're right." Across town, Olivia spent the afternoon meeting with a non-profit housing organization. The board had approved one of her neighborhood redevelopment proposals. She was thrilled. Driving home, she stopped at a local garden center. She bought fresh lavender plants for the front porch, a small bird feeder Adrian had mentioned wanting, and a wind chime shaped like tiny silver leaves. The cashier smiled. "Doing a little decorating?" Olivia returned the smile. "Just making our house feel even more like home." Those words broke something invisible. Because, while she lovingly chose flowers for a house she believed was forever, the legal ownership of that house had already changed. She simply didn't know it yet. Late that evening, Adrian walked through the front door carrying takeout from Olivia's favorite Italian restaurant. He was determined to act normal. Maybe if life continued as usual. Maybe if he solved everything quickly, this terrible mistake would disappear. Olivia met him in the kitchen. "You remembered." "I always remember." She wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you." For a moment, he held her tightly. Longer than usual. She pulled back. "You okay?" He nodded too quickly. "Yeah." She smiled. "I was thinking." He forced himself to focus. "What?" "My mom's doing much better." "That's wonderful." "I'd like to spend a couple of weeks with her next month." "Of course. I know you'll be busy." "I'll manage." She kissed his cheek. "I love you." The words caught in his throat. He wanted to say them back. Instead, he whispered, "I know." It was the first time in 13 years that he hadn't answered her the same way. Olivia noticed. She didn't say anything. But, somewhere deep inside her, a tiny crack had begun to form. She simply didn't know it yet. 3 weeks later, Olivia Carter Bennett sat beside the window of a flight from Columbus to Chicago, watching the clouds drift beneath the wings of the airplane. It had been a long 3 weeks. Her mother's health had slowly improved after emergency surgery, but the recovery had been difficult. Olivia had spent her days driving between the hospital, the rehabilitation center, and her mother's small apartment. She hadn't thought much about work, or the house, or even Adrian. Not because she didn't miss him, because life had narrowed to one simple priority, making sure her mother survived. Every evening, Adrian called. Sometimes for 5 minutes. Sometimes for 15. He always asked the same questions. "How's your mom today? Did you get any sleep? When are you coming home?" He sounded caring, supportive, normal. If there was guilt in his voice, Olivia never recognized it. She trusted him too completely to hear what wasn't being said. As the plane descended over Chicago, Olivia smiled for the first time in days. Home, the word warmed her heart. She pictured the lavender plants she'd bought before leaving. She wondered if Adrian had remembered to water them. She imagined sleeping in her own bed instead of the stiff recliner she'd used beside her mother's hospital room. She couldn't wait. An hour later, the rideshare turned onto their quiet, tree-lined street. Something felt different. Several unfamiliar vehicles lined the curb. A white moving truck sat in front of her house. Workers carried furniture through the front door. For a brief second, Olivia assumed one of the neighbors must be moving. Then the driver slowed. "Ma'am?" He looked confused. "I think your address is this one." Olivia stared through the window. "No." Her voice was barely audible. "No, that can't be right." The taxi stopped. She stepped onto the sidewalk, still believing there had to be some misunderstanding. The front garden looked different. The bird feeder she'd bought was gone. The lavender plants had been dug out. Fresh landscaping flags marked the yard. A man stood on a ladder removing the brass numbers from above the garage. Olivia frowned. "Excuse me." The man climbed down. "Yes, ma'am? What are you doing?" "Replacing the address numbers." She laughed nervously. "I mean, why?" He glanced toward the driveway. The new owners wanted everything updated before they move in. New owners? The words didn't make sense. There must be some mistake. "I'm sorry. My husband and I own this house." The contractor looked uncomfortable. "I only work here, ma'am." Before he could say anything else, a woman wearing a construction vest approached with a clipboard. "Can I help you?" Olivia forced a smile. "Yes." She pointed toward the front door. "I live here." The woman looked down at her paperwork. "I'm sorry, but this property officially changed ownership 3 days ago." Olivia blinked. "No." The woman hesitated. "I'm afraid it did. My husband owns this house." "The documents show he did." He did. Those 2 words echoed inside her mind. Not, "he does." He did. Suddenly, the world around her felt strangely quiet. The workers were still talking. Power tools still buzzed. Cars continued passing on the street. But all Olivia could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat. She reached into her purse with trembling hands. Her fingers struggled to unlock her phone. Adrian answered on the second ring. "Hey." His voice sounded calm. Almost too calm. "Adrian." Something in her tone made him stop speaking. "I'm standing outside our house." Silence. "There are moving trucks here." No response. "They're changing the locks." Still nothing. "Adrian." Her voice cracked. "Tell me, this isn't what it looks like." Several seconds passed before he finally whispered, "I was going to tell you." The sentence struck harder than any scream ever could. Olivia closed her eyes. "Tell me what?" Another long pause. I had to make a difficult decision. She slowly opened her eyes. What decision? He inhaled deeply. The house. His voice barely rose above a whisper. Isn't ours anymore. Olivia didn't cry. Not yet. She stood perfectly still. People often imagine heartbreak is loud. In reality, the deepest heartbreak is usually silent, because the mind refuses to believe what the ears have just heard. She spoke carefully. I want you to explain. I can. Then do it. Not over the phone. When? I'm on my way. 25 minutes later, Adrian pulled into the driveway. He stepped out of his car. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His face looked pale. For a moment, neither of them moved. The construction crew quietly continued working, pretending not to notice. Finally, Adrian walked toward her. Olivia. She raised one hand. No. He stopped. I asked you one question. She looked him directly in the eyes. What happened? Adrian swallowed. There was someone. Her expression changed instantly. Not anger. Recognition. There was another woman. He lowered his head. Yes. She nodded slowly. I see. There were circumstances. She interrupted him. Don't. It wasn't what you think. A faint, heartbreaking smile crossed her face. Do you know something? What? What? It never is. Adrian took another cautious step. She was in trouble. Olivia stared at him. What kind of trouble? Financial. How much? $300,000. She frowned. And what does that have to do with our home? His silence answered before he could. Her face lost all color. No. She whispered. No. He couldn't look at her. You didn't. He closed his eyes. I intended to fix everything. Her voice became almost inaudible. Adrian. She took one slow step backward. You traded our house. Another step. For another woman's debt? He quickly shook his head. It wasn't exactly like that. She laughed softly. The sound was empty. It was exactly like that. The front door opened. A real estate representative walked outside carrying a folder. She approached Adrian politely. Mr. Bennett. He turned. We'll need the remaining garage remotes before we finish today's inventory. Olivia looked from the woman to Adrian, then back to the house. Everything suddenly became painfully real. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a temporary mistake. Her home, the one place she had finally believed no one could take away, already belonged to someone else. She whispered the question that would haunt Adrian for the rest of his life. Was our marriage worth less than $300,000? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because there was no answer capable of repairing what one signature had destroyed. For several long moments, neither of them spoke. The afternoon breeze rustled the leaves of the old oak tree in the front yard. The same tree Adrian had proudly pointed to years earlier when he placed the brass key in Olivia's hand and promised she would never have to wonder where she belonged again. Now that promise stood behind them like an abandoned photograph. Beautiful, but no longer true. Adrian finally found his voice. Olivia, please let me explain everything. She looked at him with eyes that no longer searched for comfort. They searched for understanding. Then, explain. I never wanted this to happen. No, she replied quietly. You wanted something else to happen. He lowered his eyes. I thought I could solve it before you came home. You thought I wouldn't find out. The words weren't spoken with anger. They were spoken with clarity, and somehow, that hurt him even more. The construction crew had stopped pretending not to watch. Neighbors peeked through curtains. A mail carrier slowed his truck before quietly driving on. None of it mattered to Olivia. Public embarrassment was the least painful part of the afternoon. She looked toward the front porch. The wind chime shaped like silver leaves was gone. The rocking chairs they had picked out together had disappeared. Even the welcome mat with the words, "Our happy place," had been rolled up and tossed into a pile near the garage. Strangers had erased years of memories in less than a week. She took a slow breath. When? Adrian hesitated. What? When did you sign the papers? 3 weeks ago. She nodded. So, while I was sitting beside my mother's hospital bed. His silence confirmed it. You were giving away our home. Adrian quickly stepped forward. It wasn't that simple. Olivia met his eyes. No? I believed I could buy it back before you returned. You believed? She repeated the words thoughtfully. You believed you could gamble with my trust because you had enough money to fix the consequences. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because for the first time, He heard his own decision through someone else's ears. Olivia glanced around the property one last time. The flower beds, the porch swing, the upstairs bedroom window where she loved reading on rainy mornings. Every corner of the house held a memory. She remembered painting the nursery they had hoped to use one day, before years of fertility treatments ended in quiet heartbreak. She remembered Thanksgiving dinners filled with laughter, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, late-night conversations on the back porch. None of those memories belonged to the new owners, but somehow, the house no longer belonged to her either. She reached into her purse and removed her keyring. One by one, she slipped each key off the metal ring. The front door, the side entrance, the garage, the mailbox. She held them in her palm for a moment, then placed them gently into Adrian's hand. I won't need these anymore. He stared at the keys. His fingers trembled. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything. She looked at him sadly. You already did. The front door opened again. A cheerful young couple stepped outside with their real estate agent. They smiled politely at Olivia, unaware of who she was. We're so excited, the woman said. It's a beautiful home. Olivia forced a smile. It is. The woman laughed. We can already picture raising a family here. For the briefest moment, Olivia imagined telling them the truth. That she'd once dreamed the same dream. That every room had been planned with love. That the lavender plants blooming by the walkway had been planted with her own hands. Instead, she simply nodded. I hope you're very happy here. The couple thanked her and walked back inside. Adrian watched Olivia with disbelief. You aren't even angry with them. They didn't betray me. They didn't know. Exactly. She turned back to him. They're innocent. Adrian stepped closer. I'll fix this. She looked at him. How? I'll buy the house back. And what about the affair? He froze. What about every lie? Silence. What about the promises? Still silence. What about the nights you looked me in the eye and told me everything was fine? He couldn't answer, because she wasn't asking about a house anymore. She was asking about trust. And trust doesn't come with a price tag. A black SUV pulled into the driveway. Marcus Ellis climbed out. The moment he saw Olivia, he understood. He had hoped this day would never come. He walked toward them slowly. Mrs. Bennet. Olivia gave him a polite nod. Mr. Ellis. He looked deeply uncomfortable. I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. So do I. Marcus turned toward Adrian. His disappointment was unmistakable. I warned you. Adrian closed his eyes. I know. Marcus sighed. Sometimes people believe they're protecting the ones they love. He looked at Olivia. But when you remove someone's ability to choose... He paused. You aren't protecting them anymore. You're controlling the outcome. Olivia appreciated his honesty. It was the first truthful thing she'd heard all afternoon. She picked up her suitcase from the sidewalk. Adrian immediately reached for it. I'll carry it. She gently pulled it back. No. Olivia. I've carried heavier things. The words weren't about luggage. He knew that. She opened the trunk of the rideshare that had waited patiently at the curb. The driver quietly loaded her suitcase inside. Adrian's voice cracked. Where are you going? She looked at him. I honestly don't know. You can stay with me. A faint smile crossed her face. Stay where? He had no answer. The house was gone. His downtown penthouse belonged to the company. Hotels weren't homes. For the first time in years, the billionaire who could buy almost anything couldn't offer his wife a place to sleep. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Before getting into the car, Olivia reached up and slowly removed her wedding ring. She looked at it for several seconds, not with bitterness, with gratitude, because despite everything, the marriage had once been real. The love had once been genuine. She placed the ring in Adrian's palm. I can't wear a promise that no longer exists. His eyes filled with tears. Please don't leave. She looked at him one final time. I already lost my home. A long pause. I'm trying not to lose myself, too. She climbed into the back seat. The driver looked at her in the rearview mirror. Where to? Olivia stared out the window. She didn't have an answer. For the first time since she was a little girl moving between foster homes, she had nowhere to go. Finally, she whispered, just drive. The car pulled away slowly. Adrian stood alone in the driveway, the house keys in one hand and Olivia's wedding ring in the other. He wanted to run after the car. He wanted to undo the signature. He wanted another chance. But life doesn't always offer second drafts. Sometimes, one ordinary decision becomes permanent the moment it's made. As the rideshare disappeared around the corner, Adrian looked down at the ring resting in his trembling hand. It was astonishing how something so small could suddenly feel so unbearably heavy. He finally understood what Marcus had tried to tell him. He hadn't lost a house. He hadn't even lost money. He had lost the trust of the only person who had loved him long before the billions, the magazine covers, and the boardrooms. And deep inside, he feared something even worse. She might never come back. The first night was the hardest. Not because Olivia had nowhere to sleep. A close friend from work, Angela Morrison, insisted she stay in her guest room for as long as she needed. It wasn't because she lacked clothes. Her suitcase held enough for several weeks. It wasn't even because her marriage had fallen apart. What hurt most was waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and reaching across the bed out of habit, only to find empty sheets. She stared at the ceiling in the unfamiliar room. The silence was unbearable. For 13 years she had shared every morning and every evening with Adrian. Now the only sound was the ticking of a clock in someone else's house. She closed her eyes, hoping sleep would return. Instead, memories arrived. Adrian laughing while trying to assemble patio furniture. The two of them dancing barefoot in the kitchen after a thunderstorm knocked out the electricity. His excitement the day he handed her the brass key to the house. She remembered every promise, every smile, every plan. The hardest part of betrayal wasn't remembering the bad moments. It was remembering the good ones and wondering when they stopped being real. The following morning, Angela found Olivia already awake, sitting on the back porch with a mug of untouched coffee. "You've been out here long?" Olivia smiled faintly. "Since sunrise." Angela sat beside her. "You don't have to pretend you're okay." "I'm not pretending." "No?" Olivia looked toward the trees. "I'm just trying to understand how everything changed without me noticing." Angela hesitated. "Sometimes it doesn't." Olivia turned to her. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes things don't change overnight." She stirred her coffee. "They change one conversation people avoid. One truth they don't tell. One promise they break. And by the time anyone notices..." She shrugged gently. "The distance is already there." Olivia quietly nodded. "I keep wondering if I missed something." Angela smiled sadly. "That's what people who are betrayed usually do. They search themselves for someone else's mistake." Those words settled heavily in Olivia's heart. 3 days later, Olivia returned to her architectural firm. She considered taking more time off, but sitting still only gave grief more room to grow. As she entered the office, conversations stopped for a brief moment. News traveled quickly in Chicago's business community. Everyone knew. No one knew what to say. Her supervisor, Michael Grant, walked toward her with genuine concern. "It's good to see you." "It's good to be back. You don't have to jump into work today." "I'd rather work." He nodded. "I thought you might." Without another word, he handed her a project folder. Affordable housing. Exactly the kind of work she loved. For the first time in weeks, she felt useful. Work became her refuge. She buried herself in blueprints, zoning meetings, and design reviews. Unlike her personal life, architecture still obeyed logic. If a foundation was weak, you strengthened it. If a wall couldn't carry the weight above it, you redesigned it. Problems had solutions. Life wasn't nearly that simple. One afternoon, while reviewing plans, a young intern named Emily approached her desk. "Miss Bennett?" Olivia looked up. "Yes? I wanted to ask you something." "Go ahead." Emily hesitated. "How do you keep designing homes after?" She stopped herself. Olivia smiled gently. "After losing mine?" The intern looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry." "No." Olivia closed the folder in front of her. "It's a fair question." Emily waited quietly. Olivia looked across the office windows toward the Chicago skyline. "When I was little," she began, "I believed a home was something someone could give you." She paused. "Now I'm learning it's also something no one else can define for you." Emily smiled thoughtfully. "I've never thought about it like that." Neither had I. Across town, Adrian's life was beginning to unravel. The first week after Olivia left, he convinced himself she simply needed time. The second week, he sent flowers. She thanked the florist. She never accepted the delivery. The third week, he mailed a handwritten letter. It came back, unopened. He called. Straight to voicemail. He texted. No reply. He even drove past Angela's house once before immediately turning around. He hated the idea of becoming the kind of man who waited outside someone's home. Every failed attempt forced him to confront the same painful reality. There are moments in life when another apology isn't what someone needs. They need distance. The consequences didn't stop at home. During the Monday executive meeting, Adrian noticed something different. Conversations became shorter whenever he entered the room. People avoided eye contact. His longtime business partner, Ryan Collins, closed the conference room door after everyone else left. "We need to talk." Adrian nodded. "What about?" Ryan folded his arms. "I heard about Olivia." Adrian looked away. "It's personal. It's stopped being personal." "What does that mean?" Ryan sighed. "The board is asking questions." Adrian frowned. "What kind of questions?" "Questions about judgment." "My marriage has nothing to do with the company." Ryan looked at him carefully. "Normally I'd agree. But rumors are spreading that company attorneys handled the property transfer." Adrian's stomach tightened. So investors don't like hearing that the CEO used corporate legal resources to solve personal problems. It wasn't company money. "I know." Ryan leaned forward. "But perception matters." He paused. Later that afternoon, Adrian walked into Marcus Ellis's office without an appointment. Marcus looked up from his desk. "I was expecting you eventually." Adrian closed the door. "They're talking." Marcus nodded. "They will continue talking. I never used company funds." "I know. I didn't break the law." Marcus removed his glasses. "No." He looked Adrian directly in the eyes. "But you demonstrated poor judgment. There's a difference." "There is." Marcus folded his hands. "The law asks whether something is legal." He paused. "Life asks whether something is right." The room became quiet. Adrian lowered his head. For the first time, he wasn't trying to defend himself. "I'm losing everything." Marcus answered honestly. "No." Adrian looked up. "You already lost the most important thing." That evening, Olivia left the office later than usual. Instead of driving back to Angela's house, she stopped at a quiet neighborhood park. Children laughed on the playground. Parents pushed strollers along winding paths. Life continued, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. She sat alone on a bench beneath a maple tree. A little boy chased a bright red kite across the grass before tripping and falling. Within seconds, his father picked him up, brushed off his knees, encouraged him to try again. The boy smiled and started running once more. Olivia watched them disappear across the field. A quiet realization settled over her. She had spent weeks mourning the life she had lost. But perhaps she hadn't lost her ability to begin again. Perhaps starting over wasn't proof that she had failed. Perhaps it was proof that she had survived. For the first time since leaving the house, she felt something she hadn't expected. Not happiness, not peace. Hope. A tiny, fragile hope. But hope nonetheless. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Olivia stood, took a deep breath, and walked toward her car. She didn't know what the future would hold. She only knew one thing. She was done waiting for someone else to rebuild the life they had broken. She would build it herself. The following Saturday morning, Olivia woke before sunrise. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't awakened by sadness. She was awakened by purpose. Angela had left a flyer on the kitchen counter the night before. Volunteers needed West Haven Neighborhood Restoration Project. Help restore homes for senior citizens and low-income families. Angela had circled the address with a blue pen. "Thought this sounded like something you'd love." Olivia smiled to herself. Angela knew her well. She had always believed that the fastest way to quiet a hurting heart wasn't by pretending the pain didn't exist. It was by helping someone carry theirs. West Haven was one of Chicago's oldest neighborhoods. Many of its homes had been standing for nearly a century. Some only needed fresh paint. Others needed new roofs, repaired porches, or safer wheelchair ramps for elderly homeowners. By 8 o'clock that morning, dozens of volunteers had gathered outside a small community center. Retired carpenters, college students, local business owners, families with teenage children. No one asked about anyone else's past. Everyone simply picked up a tool and got to work. Olivia tied her hair into a ponytail and reached for a clipboard listing the day's assignments. "First time volunteering here?" The voice came from behind her. She turned to see a tall man in faded blue jeans, worn work boots, and a grey baseball cap with the logo of a local high school. He carried 2 buckets of paint as though they weighed almost nothing. "I'm Olivia." He smiled warmly. "Daniel Harper." He extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was firm but gentle. "Are you with one of the construction companies?" he asked. Olivia laughed. "No. I'm an architect." His eyebrows lifted. "Well?" He looked around at the aging houses. "I guess we finally have someone who actually knows what they're doing." She laughed again. "You might be disappointed." "I doubt it." There was something immediately easy about Daniel. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't curious about her personal life. He simply treated her like another volunteer. After everything that had happened, Olivia found that strangely comforting. Their assignment was to help renovate the front porch of an elderly widow named Mrs. Lorraine Jenkins, who had lived in the same home for nearly 50 years. The porch steps had become uneven. The handrails were loose. The peeling paint exposed weathered wood beneath. Mrs. Jenkins welcomed everyone with homemade lemonade. "I wish I could do more than offer drinks," she apologized. Daniel smiled. "You've already done enough." "How?" "You trusted us with your home." The elderly woman smiled. "I suppose I did." As Olivia measured the porch railing, Daniel carefully removed old boards. They worked side by side for hours, talking, laughing, sharing stories. Eventually Daniel asked, "So, what made you become an architect?" Olivia paused. "Home." He looked confused. "I spent most of my childhood moving from one foster home to another." Daniel stopped hammering. "I'm sorry." She smiled softly. "Don't be. It made me appreciate something most people take for granted." "And what's that?" "The feeling of belonging." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "My wife used to say something similar." Olivia looked at him. "You were married?" "For 12 years. What happened?" He smiled with quiet sadness. "Cancer." "I'm so sorry." "So was I." Neither of them spoke for several moments. Then Daniel picked up another piece of lumber and quietly said, "Grief changes you." Olivia nodded. "It does. But it doesn't have to define you." Those words stayed with her for the rest of the day. By lunchtime, the porch looked completely different. Fresh white paint covered every railing. The steps no longer wobbled. A new wheelchair ramp stretched gently toward the sidewalk. Mrs. Jenkins wiped tears from her eyes. "I haven't been able to sit on this porch comfortably in years." Daniel pulled 2 rocking chairs back into place. "You should probably test them." The elderly woman laughed as she slowly sat down. "It's perfect." She reached for Olivia's hand. "Thank you." Olivia looked around the neighborhood. Children rode bicycles along the street. Neighbors waved from across their yards. Volunteers joked while packing away tools. No expensive homes, no luxury cars, no headlines. Just ordinary people helping one another. She realized something important. The most valuable homes she'd ever seen weren't always the most expensive. They were the ones filled with kindness. Meanwhile, Adrian sat alone in his downtown office. The silence felt different now. Not peaceful, empty. His assistant knocked gently. "Mr. Bennett? Come in." She placed a stack of envelopes on his desk. "These require your signature." The word signature immediately tightened his chest. He looked at the documents. Routine approvals. Nothing unusual. Yet every time he picked up a pen, he remembered the afternoon that had changed everything. One signature. 5 seconds. A lifetime of consequences. He signed the papers mechanically before pushing them aside. His assistant hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" He looked up. "Of course. I've worked for you almost 9 years. I know. I've never seen you this distracted." He managed a weak smile. "I've made some mistakes." She nodded gently. "We all do." "No." He looked toward the window. "Not like this." That evening, Adrian stopped at the house. Not because he expected to go inside. He no longer owned it. The new family had officially moved in earlier that week. Children's bicycles now rested beside the garage. Fresh flower pots decorated the porch. Lights glowed warmly through the living room windows. Life had continued. Without him, without Olivia. He remained inside his car for several minutes before quietly driving away. Sometimes the hardest punishment isn't losing something. It's watching someone else happily enjoy what you threw away. Sunday morning brought another volunteer project. When Olivia arrived, Daniel was already unloading lumber from a pickup truck. "You came back." She smiled. "I guess I did. I was hoping you would." He handed her a pair of work gloves. "Today's assignment is less glamorous." "Oh? We're cleaning out an abandoned community garden." She laughed. "I've done worse." As they pulled weeds and repaired broken planter boxes, Daniel asked, "Can I give you a piece of advice?" She looked at him. "Sure. I don't know what you've been through." She appreciated that he didn't assume. "But, whatever happened..." "Oh," he paused. "Don't let one person's decision convince you that everyone will eventually disappoint you." Olivia considered his words carefully. "I'll try." "No." He smiled kindly. "Just promise you'll stay open to the possibility that there are still good people." She smiled for the first time that morning. "I can promise that." It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't romance. It was something much smaller. Hope beginning to trust again. Weeks passed. Olivia continued volunteering every Saturday. She found herself looking forward to those mornings. Not because Daniel would be there, though she admitted to herself that she enjoyed his company. She looked forward to them, because they reminded her who she had always been. Before betrayal, before heartbreak, before lawyers and headlines, she was someone who believed people deserved safe places to live. One afternoon, as she packed away paintbrushes, Daniel walked over holding 2 cups of coffee. "I made an extra." She accepted one. "Thanks." They stood quietly watching volunteers finish for the day. After several minutes, Daniel spoke. "You know?" "What?" "When I first met you, you looked like someone carrying a house on her shoulders." She laughed softly. "And now?" He smiled. "Now it looks like you're finally putting the bricks down." Olivia looked out across the neighborhood. Maybe he was right. Healing hadn't arrived all at once. It came through ordinary mornings, shared conversations, acts of service, small choices. The very kind of choices that, over time, shaped the direction of a life. As she climbed into her car that evening, her phone buzzed. It was an email from her attorney. Subject: important documents regarding Bennett Holdings. Olivia frowned. She hadn't contacted a lawyer. Curious, she opened the message. Attached was a single sentence from the sender. "Mrs. Bennett, I believe there are several things about your husband's business that you deserve to know." She stared at the screen. Her quiet new beginning had just met the first shadow from her past. Olivia didn't open the attachment immediately. Instead, she locked her phone and placed it face down on the kitchen counter. Angela noticed. "Aren't you going to read it?" Olivia exhaled slowly. "I don't know. It could be important. It could also pull me back into a life I'm trying to leave behind." Angela nodded. "That's true." She poured 2 cups of tea before sitting across from her friend. "But ignoring the truth has never protected anyone." Olivia looked at the unopened email again. That sentence settled deep inside her. Ignoring the truth had certainly never protected her marriage. Finally, she picked up her phone. The attachment contained only 3 pages. No dramatic accusations. No emotional language. Just copies of corporate records, meeting notes, and a handwritten message at the end. "Mrs. Bennett, you don't know me personally. I've worked with Bennett Holdings for almost 11 years. I'm leaving the company, and before I do, I believe you deserve to know that your contributions to the business were never as small as people were led to believe. There are records you should review. You helped build more than a marriage. You helped build an empire. There was no signature. Only the words, 'Someone with a conscience.'" Olivia read the message twice, then a third time. She frowned. "I don't understand." Angela leaned closer. "What is it?" "Someone thinks I own part of Adrian's business." Angela looked confused. "Do you?" Olivia shook her head. "I never invested money." "But did you contribute?" Olivia thought back over the years. She had reviewed proposals, suggested expansion locations, introduced Adrian to non-profit leaders who later became development partners, designed community layouts that helped several of his real estate investments succeed. At the time, none of it felt unusual. That's what spouses did. They supported one another. "I never expected anything in return," Olivia said quietly. Angela smiled gently. "Expecting payment and having legal rights aren't always the same thing." The following morning, Olivia scheduled a meeting with an attorney recommended by one of her former colleagues. Her office overlooked the Chicago River. The brass plaque on the door read, "Sophia Monroe Business Litigation and Partnership Law." Sophia greeted Olivia warmly. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." "So am I." After brief introductions, Olivia handed her the anonymous email. Sophia read every page without interruption. When she finished, she looked up. "Tell me something." "Okay. During your marriage, how involved were you in Adrian's business?" Olivia smiled awkwardly. "Not very." Sophia leaned back. "Let's not underestimate your role just yet." For the next hour, she asked detailed questions. Who attended early investor meetings? Who reviewed presentations? Who connected Adrian with developers? Who suggested expanding into mixed-use communities instead of luxury-only projects? Who introduced him to city housing officials? With each answer, Sophia wrote another note. Finally, she placed her pen down. "I think we've been asking the wrong question." Olivia looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "The question isn't whether you owned stock." She folded her hands. "The question is whether your intellectual contributions created measurable business value." Olivia blinked. "I've never thought about it that way." "I don't imagine you have." Sophia opened a legal textbook from her shelf. "People often think ownership only comes from money." She smiled. "But businesses are built with ideas, relationships, designs, negotiations, and strategy." She pointed toward the pages. "When someone's work materially contributes to creating wealth, The law sometimes recognizes that contribution. Olivia listened carefully. I never signed an employment contract. You didn't have to. I wasn't trying to build his company. I know, Sophia nodded. But intent and contribution aren't always the same thing. The conversation lasted nearly 3 hours. By the end, Sophia gave Olivia a simple assignment. I want everything. Olivia frowned. Everything? Every notebook. Every email. Every sketch. Every calendar. Every presentation. Every text message discussing business. Olivia laughed softly. That's 20 years of paperwork. Sophia smiled. Good. The truth usually leaves a paper trail. For the next several days, Olivia transformed Angela's dining room into a temporary archive. Storage boxes filled one corner. Old laptops sat charging on the table. Folders covered nearly every surface. Angela walked into the room carrying sandwiches. I feel like I just entered a detective movie. Olivia laughed. It looks worse than it is. Angela picked up one notebook. You kept all these? Olivia nodded. My foster mother taught me never to throw away important documents. Smart woman. Very. As Olivia sorted through years of files, forgotten memories resurfaced. A notebook from Adrian's first startup. Hand-drawn maps identifying neighborhoods with future growth potential. Meeting notes where she'd questioned risky investments. Emails suggesting partnerships that eventually earned millions. She wasn't searching for evidence. She was rediscovering her own history. Meanwhile, Adrian tried to distract himself with work. It wasn't working. Every room reminded him of Olivia. The empty passenger seat during his morning commute. The untouched coffee mug she used to leave beside his laptop. Even the grocery store became unbearable when he instinctively reached for her favorite brand of tea. One evening, Ryan Collins stopped by Adrian's office. You've missed 3 board dinners. I know. You've cancelled 2 investor meetings. I know. Ryan sighed. This isn't you. Adrian stared out the window. I don't even know who me is anymore. Ryan pulled up a chair. Then start with something simple. Like what? The truth. Adrian gave a tired laugh. Little late for that. It's never too late to tell the truth. It can be too late to change the outcome. Ryan couldn't argue with that. Across town, Vanessa Reed sat alone in a nearly empty apartment. The debt had been settled. The threatening phone calls had stopped. Yet, peace never came. She stared at the expensive watch Adrian had bought her months earlier. For the first time, it felt less like a gift, and more like evidence. She opened a drawer containing every piece of jewelry he had ever given her. Bracelets, necklaces, earrings. She quietly closed the drawer again. None of it felt valuable anymore, because every gift carried the same invisible price. Someone else's trust. Late Friday afternoon, Olivia made a remarkable discovery. Hidden inside an old storage box was a spiral notebook from nearly 14 years earlier. The cover simply read, Expansion Ideas. She flipped through the pages. Her own handwriting filled nearly every sheet. Community development concepts, technology distribution models, neighborhood investment strategies. Then one page made her stop. Across the top, in bold letters, she had written, Mixed-Use Community Logistics Model. Her eyes widened. She remembered that meeting. Adrian had been ready to invest in expensive commercial developments. She had convinced him to build mixed-use communities instead, combining housing, retail, and logistics hubs. It became the company's most profitable expansion in its history. She quickly searched old financial reports. The same initiative had generated hundreds of millions of dollars over the following decade. She sat back in her chair, not because she suddenly wanted the money, but because she finally understood something Adrian never had. She hadn't merely supported his dreams. She had helped shape them. Her phone rang. It was Sophia. Olivia? I think I found something. Sophia's voice became serious. How significant? Olivia looked down at the notebook. I don't know yet. She paused. But I think this changes everything. Olivia barely slept that night. The spiral notebook remained on the dining room table, surrounded by stacks of folders, printed emails, and faded legal pads from years she had almost forgotten. She wasn't thinking about money. She was thinking about memory. For so long, she had convinced herself that she had simply stood beside Adrian while he built a remarkable company. Now, piece by piece, she was discovering something different. She hadn't been standing beside the foundation. She had helped pour it. The next morning, she arrived at Sophia Monroe's office, carrying 2 banker boxes filled with documents. Sophia looked from the boxes to Olivia and smiled. I'll take that as a good sign. I'm not sure. Let's find out. For nearly 4 hours, they reviewed everything. Emails, meeting agendas, handwritten notes. architectural sketches, calendar entries, investment presentations. Sophia highlighted dates on a legal pad. This email, she pointed to one printed page, was sent 2 weeks before Bennett Holdings entered the mixed-use development market. Olivia nodded. I remember writing it. Sophia flipped to another document. And this proposal? I redesigned it after Adrian said investors weren't interested. What happened? They approved it. Sophia looked up. They didn't just approve it. She turned her computer monitor toward Olivia. It became one of the company's most profitable divisions. Olivia stared silently at the numbers. She had never connected the two. Not because she underestimated her abilities, because she had never viewed marriage as a competition over who deserved credit. Sophia leaned back in her chair. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. What do you want? Olivia answered without hesitation. I want my life back. Sophia smiled sadly. I wish I could give you that. So do I. What else? Olivia looked out the office window toward the Chicago River. I want the truth. And after that? A long silence filled the room. Finally, Olivia spoke. I don't want to spend years trying to destroy Adrian. Sophia nodded. I believe you. I don't hate him. You don't have to hate someone to hold them accountable. Olivia lowered her eyes. I don't want revenge. Sophia closed the file in front of her. Good. Because revenge is emotional. She gently rested her hand on the documents. That single word stayed with Olivia all afternoon. Fairness, not punishment, not humiliation, not making Adrian suffer the way she had suffered. Fairness. She remembered something Mrs. Eleanor Hayes had once told her as a little girl. Justice isn't about hurting the person who hurt you. It's about making sure the truth has somewhere to stand. At the time, she hadn't fully understood those words. Now she finally did. Meanwhile, Adrian was fighting battles he never expected. Monday morning's executive board meeting lasted less than 30 minutes. Normally, the room buzzed with discussion. This time, every conversation felt careful, measured, as if everyone feared saying the wrong thing. The chairman, Henry Lawson, adjusted his glasses before speaking. Adrian, before we discuss quarterly performance, there's another matter. Adrian already knew. My personal life. Henry nodded. Ordinarily, the board wouldn't concern itself with that. But your personal decisions have become a reputational issue. Ryan Collins quietly slid a newspaper across the table. The headline wasn't about the affair. It was about leadership. Local billionaire faces questions after property dispute. Adrian read only the first paragraph before folding the paper. I understand. Henry studied him carefully. We're not asking for details. We're asking whether there's anything else the board needs to know. Adrian hesitated, then answered honestly, no. It wasn't entirely true. He still hadn't mentioned the affair, or Vanessa, or the legal transfer. Every omission made the truth feel heavier. Across town, Vanessa Reed sat inside a small coffee shop, staring at her untouched latte. The relief she expected after her debt disappeared had never arrived. Instead, guilt followed her everywhere. She remembered Olivia's face from charity events. Kind, warm, always welcoming. Olivia had once spent nearly an hour helping Vanessa organize donations for a children's housing fundraiser. She had no idea who Vanessa really was. Vanessa covered her eyes with one hand. What have I done? For the first time, she admitted something she had avoided for months. Adrian hadn't ruined only his marriage. She had helped him do it. That evening, Sophia called Olivia. I've finished my preliminary review. What did you find? A pattern. Olivia listened carefully. You weren't occasionally involved in Adrian's business. You were consistently involved. She continued. More importantly, several executives repeatedly acknowledged your contributions in writing. Sophia forwarded several emails. One read, Olivia's neighborhood strategy completely changed the investor presentation. We should use her version. Another stated, Mrs. Bennett's design recommendations increased projected revenue significantly. Another simply read, Tell Olivia she just saved us 6 months of planning. Olivia stared at the screen. She had forgotten those messages. At the time, they felt ordinary. Now, they looked like evidence. The following afternoon, Sophia invited Olivia back to discuss next steps. She spread several folders across the conference table. There are 3 possible paths. Olivia listened. First, we do nothing. Olivia nodded. Second, we negotiate privately. And third, Sophia folded her hands. We file a formal civil action requesting recognition of your documented contributions and any financial interest the court determines is appropriate." Olivia remained silent. Sophia didn't pressure her. Instead, she asked one final question. If Adrian had never transferred your home, if he had confessed everything before you found out, if he had come to you with honesty, would you be sitting here today? Olivia answered almost immediately. No. Why not? Because I trusted him. Sophia nodded slowly. And that's exactly why this case isn't about business. She looked Olivia gently in the eyes. It's about the consequences of broken trust. That night, Olivia drove alone to the lakefront. The city lights shimmered across Lake Michigan. She remembered standing there years earlier with Adrian, dreaming about their future. Neither of them imagined it would end like this. Her phone buzzed. It was Adrian. She watched it ring, then stop. A voicemail notification appeared moments later. She didn't play it. Some conversations require readiness. She wasn't there yet. Instead, she looked up at the dark water stretching toward the horizon. She realized something surprising. She no longer wanted Adrian to lose everything. She simply wanted him to stop pretending that his choices hadn't cost anyone else. There was a difference. A very important difference. The next morning, Olivia returned to Sophia's office. Sophia looked up as she entered. "Have you made your decision?" Olivia nodded. "I have." She took a deep breath. "I don't want revenge. I know. I don't want headlines. I know. I don't want to destroy him." Sophia smiled softly. "I know." Olivia looked down at the neatly prepared legal documents resting on the conference table. Then she picked up the pen. "This isn't about what he owes me emotionally." She signed the first page. "It's about acknowledging the truth." She signed the second. "And accepting responsibility." The final signature took only a few seconds. When she finished, Sophia quietly gathered the documents. "I'll file these with the court this afternoon." Olivia stood and walked toward the window. Far below, people hurried along busy Chicago sidewalks, each carrying burdens invisible to everyone else. She whispered almost to herself, "I loved him enough to help him build his future." A long pause. "He should have loved me enough not to erase my place in it." As Sophia sealed the legal file, neither woman celebrated. There was no victory, only resolve. Because sometimes, seeking justice isn't about winning. It's about refusing to let the truth remain buried. If you were in Olivia's position, would you have filed the lawsuit, or would you have walked away and never looked back? Share your thoughts in the comments below. There are no easy answers, and respectful discussions often help us see situations from different perspectives. If you're enjoying this story, please like this video, subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson, and turn on the notification bell. In Chapter 6, the lawsuit becomes public. Investors begin asking difficult questions, old secrets resurface, and Adrian discovers that the consequences of one signature are only just beginning. The lawsuit became public on a Tuesday morning, not with flashing news alerts, not with television cameras parked outside the courthouse. Just a simple legal filing uploaded to the county court's public records. For nearly 2 hours, almost no one noticed. Then a local business reporter covering commercial litigation stumbled across the case. Within an hour, the headline appeared online. Billionaire CEO faces civil suit from estranged wife over alleged business contributions and property dispute. The article didn't accuse Adrian Bennett of committing a crime. It didn't call him a fraud. It simply summarized the facts available in the filing. A gifted home, a secret property transfer, a civil claim alleging years of overlooked professional contributions. That was enough. By lunchtime, every major business publication in Chicago had picked up the story. Adrian was halfway through a strategy meeting when his phone began vibrating non-stop. At first, he ignored it. Then, Ryan Collins leaned over and quietly slid his own phone across the conference table. "You need to see this." Adrian looked down. The article filled the screen. He read the headline once, then again. The room suddenly felt smaller. Around the table, no one spoke. No one needed to. Everyone had already seen it. He slowly placed the phone face down. "We'll continue." No one opened another presentation. The meeting was over before anyone officially ended it. As executives filed out of the room, Ryan remained behind. He closed the door quietly. "You should have told us." Adrian rubbed his forehead. "I thought I could handle it privately." Ryan stared at him. "When did you stop asking for help?" Adrian looked up. "I don't know." Ryan sighed. "I do. When you started believing you had to solve every problem alone." He paused. "And that's exactly when you started making the worst decisions." Adrian couldn't argue. Because Ryan wasn't talking about business anymore. He was talking about pride. Across town, Olivia was reviewing building permits when her phone buzzed repeatedly. Angela walked into her office, holding a tablet. It's everywhere. Olivia looked up. What is? The lawsuit. Angela hesitated. The media found it. Olivia took the tablet. She scanned the article quietly, then handed it back. I never wanted this. Angela knew she was telling the truth. People hear the word lawsuit and assume someone wants revenge. Olivia looked out the window. I wanted privacy. She paused. But I wanted honesty more. By mid-afternoon, reporters had gathered outside Bennett Holdings headquarters. Security directed them away from the main entrance. Employees avoided making eye contact as they hurried inside. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked sympathetic. Many simply looked uncertain. Inside the executive offices, Henry Lawson called an emergency board meeting. Every board member attended, no exceptions. When Adrian entered the room, the usual friendly conversations stopped. Henry motioned toward the empty chair at the end of the table. Please. Adrian sat. The chairman folded his hands. We've reviewed the lawsuit. Adrian nodded. It's a civil matter. It is. Henry agreed. But civil matters can become business matters. One board member spoke up. Our investors are asking questions. Another added, so are our banking partners. A third looked directly at Adrian. Did your wife contribute to the company? The question hung in the air. Adrian hesitated, then answered honestly, yes. The room became very quiet. How much? He looked around the table. More than I acknowledged. No one accused him of theft. No one questioned his intelligence. Instead, they questioned something far more valuable. His judgment. One board member finally broke the silence. If you were willing to hide something this significant from your wife. He paused carefully. How do we know you haven't hidden important information from us? Adrian's heart sank. I have never lied to this board. Henry nodded. I believe you. He sighed. But trust isn't built only on whether someone tells the truth. It's built on whether people believe your judgment. Those words stayed with Adrian long after the meeting ended. Meanwhile, Sophia Monroe continued preparing Olivia's case. She spread dozens of documents across the conference table. Every email was organized by date. Every notebook cross-referenced. Every business proposal matched to later financial outcomes. Her junior associate looked impressed. I've never seen records this detailed. Sophia smiled. That's because Olivia wasn't trying to build evidence. She was simply organized. The associate looked through another folder. The timeline is remarkable. Sophia nodded. It tells a story. What story? That extraordinary businesses are rarely built by one person. Late that afternoon, Olivia received an unexpected visitor. Daniel Harper stood in the reception area, holding a small paper bag. She looked surprised. What are you doing here? He smiled awkwardly. I heard you'd probably skipped lunch. She laughed softly. How did you know? I volunteered with enough architects to recognize the signs. He handed her the bag. Turkey sandwich, apple, and terrible vending machine cookies. She smiled for the first time all day. You drove all the way downtown for this? I was in the area. She raised an eyebrow. Were you? He laughed. Okay. I wasn't. I just figured today might be difficult. Olivia looked down at the bag. Thank you. Daniel shrugged. Sometimes people don't need advice. They just need someone who remembers they should eat. She felt tears forming unexpectedly. Not because of the sandwich, because of the thoughtfulness behind it. After everything she'd experienced, simple kindness felt extraordinary. Across the city, Vanessa Reed watched the news coverage from her apartment. Every headline mentioned Adrian. Several mentioned Olivia. None mentioned her. She should have felt relieved. Instead, the silence made her feel worse. She switched off the television, walked to the bedroom, opened the drawer containing every gift Adrian had ever bought her. Then, one by one, she placed each item into a cardboard box. The diamond earrings, the designer watch, the gold bracelet. None of them felt beautiful anymore. Each carried the weight of someone else's pain. She sealed the box, not because she knew what to do with it, but because she couldn't bear looking at it any longer. That evening, Adrian sat alone in his office, long after everyone else had gone home. The city lights glowed beyond the windows. His desk was covered with legal documents, investor updates, public relations strategies, crisis management plans. He ignored all of them. Instead, he opened an old photo stored on his phone. Olivia stood on the front porch of the house, smiling through tears as she held the brass key he had given her. He remembered exactly what she had said that day. This is the first place I've ever believed no one could take away from me. He closed his eyes. The irony was almost unbearable. He had spent years protecting his company from competitors, economic downturns, and legal risks. Yet he had failed to protect the one promise that mattered most. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Ellis appeared. "We need to talk tomorrow. This is getting bigger than any of us expected." Adrian stared at the screen. For the first time since signing the papers, he realized something terrifying. He wasn't just fighting a lawsuit anymore. He was fighting the consequences of becoming someone he no longer recognized. Adrian barely slept. He had fallen asleep on the couch in his downtown apartment sometime after midnight, still wearing yesterday's suit. Around 4 in the morning, he woke to the glow of the television silently replaying business headlines. His own face filled the screen. He quickly muted it. For years, he had dreamed of seeing his company mentioned in the news. He just never imagined it would be for this reason. He walked to the kitchen, poured himself a cup of coffee, and stood looking out over the Chicago skyline. The city was waking up. Delivery trucks rolled through empty streets. Commuters hurried toward train stations. Coffee shops unlocked their doors. Life moved forward. It always did, whether someone was celebrating the best day of their life or living through the worst. At 8 o'clock sharp, Adrian walked into Marcus Ellis's office. Marcus didn't waste time with small talk. He placed a thick folder on the conference table. "I've reviewed Olivia's filing." Adrian nodded. "So have I." "No." Marcus pushed the folder closer. "I've reviewed the evidence." Adrian looked down. Emails, meeting minutes, presentation drafts, architectural drawings. Each document seemed ordinary on its own. Together, they told a different story. Marcus tapped one page. "Do you remember this?" Adrian glanced at it. It was an email from 12 years earlier. Subject: Distribution Expansion Proposal. His eyes widened. "I forgot about this." Marcus looked at him. "Olivia didn't." He opened another document. "This meeting." Adrian nodded slowly. "She convinced us not to build luxury-only developments." "And what happened?" "We shifted to mixed-use communities." Marcus turned another page, which became the company's highest-performing division. Adrian leaned back in his chair. "I never meant to take credit for her work." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "No?" Adrian hesitated. "I just—" His voice trailed off. Marcus finished the sentence for him. "You got used to people assuming the ideas were yours." The words stung because they were true. Not entirely, but enough. Marcus closed the folder. "I need you to understand something." "I'm listening." "This lawsuit isn't dangerous because of the money." Adrian frowned. "Then why?" "Because it tells a believable story." He folded his hands. "People don't judge leaders only by what they achieve. They judge them by how they treat the people who helped them succeed." Adrian looked toward the window. "I never thought she'd take me to court." Marcus sighed. "I never thought you'd sign those papers." Neither man spoke again for several moments. Across town, Olivia was spending another Saturday at the West Haven Neighborhood Restoration Project. The lawsuit had become the talk of the city. She expected people to ask questions. Instead, no one mentioned it. Daniel handed her a paint roller. "Ready?" She smiled. "Always." They spent the morning repainting the exterior of a small home owned by a retired school principal named Mr. Howard Ellis. By lunchtime, the old grey siding had been transformed into a warm cream color. Mr. Ellis stepped outside and smiled. "I forgot my house could look like this." Daniel laughed. "Sometimes, all something needs is a fresh coat of paint." The older man nodded thoughtfully. "People, too." Olivia smiled. "That's a nice way of looking at it." Mr. Ellis looked at both of them. "You know, when my wife was alive, she'd always tell me that resentment is like painting over rotten wood." Daniel tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "It looks better for a while." He tapped one of the porch posts. "But if you don't repair what's underneath—" "Nah," he shrugged. "The problem always comes back." Olivia quietly absorbed his words. It wasn't enough to move on. She had to heal honestly. Otherwise, the hurt would simply hide beneath the surface. During their lunch break, Daniel and Olivia sat beneath a large maple tree sharing sandwiches. For a while, they simply watched children planting flowers in the community garden. Finally, Daniel spoke. "I almost asked you something. What stopped you?" "I wasn't sure it was my place." She smiled. "You can ask." He hesitated. "Are you okay?" Olivia looked at her sandwich before answering. "I'm breathing." Daniel chuckled. "That's not what I asked." "I know," she sighed. "Some days, I'm angry. Some days, I'm sad. And some days—" She looked toward the neighborhood. "I forget about everything for an hour." Daniel nodded. "Those hours get longer." She looked at him. How do you know? He smiled softly. Because, after my wife died. He looked toward the sky. I thought I'd never laugh again. A long silence settled between them. Then, one day, he continued, someone told a terrible joke. Despite myself, I laughed. He smiled. I felt guilty. Why? Because I thought healing meant I was leaving her behind. Olivia understood immediately. What did you learn? Daniel looked at her. I learned that moving forward isn't the same as forgetting. His words settled gently into her heart. Meanwhile, Bennett Holdings continued to feel the pressure. 2 long-time investors requested meetings with the board. Not because profits had declined. The company was still financially strong. They wanted reassurance. One investor spoke bluntly. We invest in leadership. He looked around the room. If the public loses confidence in your leadership, our investment becomes riskier. Henry Lawson listened carefully. We understand. The investor continued. We're not asking you to remove Adrian. We're asking whether Adrian still has the confidence of this board. No one answered immediately. Silence sometimes says more than words. Later that afternoon, Ryan Collins found Adrian sitting alone in the company cafeteria. Normally, the room buzzed with employees during lunch. Today, most had quietly chosen other floors. Ryan sat across from him. You know what's strange? Adrian looked up. What? No one here hates you. Adrian gave a tired smile. It doesn't feel that way. They're disappointed. Ryan corrected. There's a difference. Adrian stared into his untouched coffee. I keep wishing I could go back. Ryan nodded. We all do. But life doesn't work that way. He leaned forward. The only thing you can change now is who you become next. That evening, Vanessa stood outside Bennett Holdings headquarters. She had been there for nearly 20 minutes, watching employees leave, watching reporters wait near the entrance, watching Adrian's world slowly crumble. She finally reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Her finger hovered over his name. She wanted to call, to apologize, to admit her own part in everything. Instead, she deleted his number, not because she hated him, because she finally understood that every conversation between them kept both of them trapped in the same painful past. Some relationships don't end because love disappears. They end because continuing them only causes more harm. As the sun set over Chicago, Olivia returned to Angela's house. She opened the front door and immediately noticed a small envelope resting on the hallway table. Angela looked up from the living room. It was delivered by courier. Olivia frowned. For me? Angela nodded. There wasn't a return address. Olivia carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. Only one sentence. There are people inside Bennett Holdings who are finally ready to tell the truth. Tucked behind the note was a flash drive. No explanation, no name. Just a small silver drive holding secrets she wasn't expecting. Olivia turned it over in her hand. Whatever was on it. Someone had risked a great deal to make sure she received it. She looked out the window at the fading evening light. The lawsuit had opened the first door. Now, someone else was opening another. Olivia stared at the flash drive for nearly a minute before saying a single word. I'm not opening it. Angela looked up from the couch. You aren't? Olivia slowly shook her head. If someone took a risk to send this, then it belongs in the hands of my attorney first. Angela smiled. I think that's the right decision. Olivia slipped the flash drive into a small envelope. I've spent enough weeks reacting emotionally. She picked up her phone. I'm going to keep making decisions I can defend later. For the first time since leaving her home, she realized something important. Healing wasn't changing who she was. It was refusing to let betrayal change her values. The next morning, Sophia Monroe plugged the flash drive into a secure computer in her office. Olivia sat across from her, watching silently. Several folders appeared on the screen. Executive Correspondence Board Communications, Strategic Planning, Archived Meeting Notes. Sophia frowned. This isn't random. She opened the first folder. Inside were years of internal emails. Nothing illegal, nothing fraudulent, but something far more revealing. Repeated acknowledgements of Olivia's role in major business decisions. One email from a former vice president read, Olivia's redesign of the logistics model increased long-term profitability more than we originally projected. Another read, please invite Mrs. Bennett to next week's strategy meeting. Her perspective has become invaluable. Sophia clicked through dozens more. Finally, she looked at Olivia. These documents don't create your case. They strengthen it. Olivia remained quiet. She wasn't celebrating. She was remembering. Remembering all the evenings she spent helping Adrian solve problems after dinner. remembering weekends filled with sketches spread across the dining room table. She had never asked for recognition. She simply believed they were building one future together. Sophia removed the flash drive. I have one question. Olivia nodded. Who sent this? I honestly don't know. Sophia looked thoughtful. Someone inside that company has decided the truth matters more than loyalty. She sealed the drive inside an evidence bag. I'll notify the court that additional documentation has been received. Olivia stood. Thank you. As she reached the door, Sophia stopped her. One more thing. Olivia turned. Don't let this lawsuit become your identity. She smiled gently. Win or lose. You still have to wake up the next morning and live your life. Olivia smiled. I don't intend to forget that. Saturday arrived with clear skies and unusually cool weather. The West Haven Neighborhood Restoration Project was restoring a small playground beside an elementary school. Children watched excitedly from behind temporary safety fences while volunteers replaced broken benches and installed new swings. Daniel was already tightening bolts on a picnic table when Olivia arrived. You made it. I wouldn't miss it. He handed her a pair of work gloves. I saved these. She laughed. I think they're becoming my official uniform. They look better than the expensive ones. You noticed? I notice more than people think. His answer caught her off guard. Not because it sounded romantic, because it sounded sincere. As they worked, several neighborhood children wandered over. One little girl watched Olivia paint a bench. Are you the lady who builds houses? Olivia smiled. Sometimes. The little girl thought for a moment. My mommy says home isn't the same as a house. Olivia paused. Your mom sounds wise. The child nodded proudly. She says people make a home. After the girl ran off, Daniel looked at Olivia. Smart kid. Very. She smiled faintly. I spent years believing if I built the perfect house. She looked toward the children laughing on the playground. I'd finally feel safe. And now? Olivia rested the paintbrush across the bucket. Now I think people give places meaning. Daniel nodded. I agree. He smiled. I loved the little apartment my wife and I rented when we were first married. You did? The roof leaked. The heater barely worked. The kitchen was too small. He laughed. But I'd move back there tomorrow if it meant having one more dinner with her. Olivia felt her throat tighten. Money had never been what made a place valuable. Love had. Meanwhile, Adrian found himself standing outside a florist. The owner recognized him immediately. Good morning, Mr. Bennett. Morning. What can I help you with today? Adrian looked around the shop. Rows of fresh flowers filled every corner. Roses, lilies, sunflowers, hydrangeas. He remembered Olivia's favorite, white peonies. She once told him they reminded her that beautiful things often required patience. I'll take the peonies. Of course. As the florist arranged the bouquet, she smiled. Special occasion? Adrian answered quietly. I'm hoping for another chance. An hour later, Adrian stood outside Angela Morrison's house. The bouquet rested in his hands. He hesitated before knocking. Angela opened the door. Her expression remained polite. Hello, Adrian. I know Olivia's here. Angela didn't deny it. I just want 5 minutes. She studied him carefully. You've had weeks. I know. I made terrible choices. I know. I just need to apologize. Angela sighed. Wait here. She closed the door. A minute later, she returned alone. She doesn't want to see me? Angela shook her head gently. No. Adrian looked at the flowers. I understand. Before leaving, he handed Angela the bouquet. If she changes her mind. Angela accepted them. I'll make sure she gets them. He nodded. Thank you. As he drove away, Angela carried the flowers into the kitchen. Olivia looked up. Who were those for? Angela placed them on the table. Adrian. Olivia stared at the white peonies. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Finally, she smiled sadly. They're beautiful. Angela waited. What do you want me to do with them? Olivia thought carefully before answering. Take them to St. Mary's Hospice. Angela looked surprised. The nurses always keep fresh flowers at the front desk. She gently touched one white blossom. They'll brighten someone's day. Angela smiled. You don't want to keep even one? Olivia slowly shook her head. If I keep them, they'll become a reminder of what I lost. She looked toward the window. I'd rather they become a reminder that kindness can still reach someone who needs it. Angela quietly carried the bouquet back to the car. Watching her leave, Olivia realized she no longer needed grand gestures. Flowers couldn't repair broken trust. Jewelry couldn't restore honesty. Expensive gifts couldn't erase painful choices. Some things simply had to be earned. Later that evening, Daniel stopped by Mrs. Jenkins' house to check on the porch they had repaired weeks earlier. Olivia happened to be there, helping install a new mailbox. Mrs. Jenkins smiled as she watched them work. "You two make a good team." Olivia laughed. "We're just volunteers." The elderly woman shook her head. "No." She looked thoughtfully between them. "You're two people who know what it's like to lose something." She paused. "And, because of that, you notice when someone else needs help." Neither Olivia nor Daniel answered, because they knew she was right. Pain had changed them, but it hadn't made them bitter. It had made them more compassionate. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, Daniel walked Olivia to her car. "I've been meaning to ask you something." She looked at him. "What is it? Would you like to have dinner sometime?" He smiled awkwardly. "Not as a date." She raised an eyebrow. "Then as what?" "As two friends who enjoy good conversation." Olivia considered it, then smiled. "I'd like that." Neither of them knew it yet, but the strongest relationships often begin without trying to become relationships at all. They begin with kindness, respect, and the simple willingness to show up. The following Wednesday evening, Olivia arrived at a small family-owned Italian restaurant tucked away on a quiet street just north of downtown Chicago. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't trendy. There were no celebrities, photographers, or business executives trying to close million-dollar deals. The hostess greeted Daniel by name. "Good to see you again, Mr. Harper." "You too, Linda." She smiled at Olivia. "Your usual table is ready." Olivia looked at Daniel with amusement. "You have a usual table?" He laughed. "I come here after parent-teacher conferences." "You teach history, right?" 10th and 11th grade. "I remember." He pulled out her chair before taking his own seat. "The students think history is about memorizing dates." "And you?" "I think history is about choices." Olivia smiled. "That's an interesting way to see it." Daniel nodded. "Every chapter in history begins with someone making one decision. Sometimes a wise one. Sometimes a terrible one." He looked at her kindly. "And then everyone spends years living with the consequences." His words lingered between them. They weren't really talking about history anymore. Dinner felt easy. There was no pressure to impress one another, no awkward silence, no carefully rehearsed stories. They talked about favorite books, childhood memories, and the strange things students sometimes wrote on history exams. Daniel laughed as he recalled one answer. "I asked a student why the American Revolution began. And he wrote, because King George needed better communication skills." Olivia burst into laughter. "Honestly." She wiped away a tear from laughing. "That's not entirely wrong." Daniel grinned. "I gave him partial credit." For the first time in months, Olivia laughed without forcing herself, without guilt, without immediately remembering what she had lost. Daniel noticed. He didn't point it out. He simply appreciated the moment. As they walked toward the parking lot after dinner, Daniel spoke carefully. "Can I ask you something personal?" Olivia nodded. "You can always say no." "I know." He hesitated. "Do you still love him?" The question caught her off guard. She looked down at the sidewalk before answering. "I don't know." Daniel waited patiently. "I loved the man I believed he was." She paused. "I'm still grieving the man I thought I married." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's honest." She looked at him. "People think betrayal makes love disappear overnight. It doesn't." "No, it changes it." She folded her arms against the cool evening air. "I don't wake up wishing Adrian would suffer. I wake up wishing none of this had ever happened." Daniel smiled gently. "I think that's the difference between pain and bitterness." Meanwhile, Adrian sat alone in the conference room at Bennett Holdings. The emergency board meeting had stretched into its third hour. Financial performance remained strong. Profits were stable. The company's future looked secure. Yet no one seemed interested in quarterly earnings. Henry Lawson closed another folder. "We've spoken with outside counsel." Adrian looked up. "And? They believe the lawsuit itself won't significantly harm the company." Adrian released a slow breath. "But," Henry continued, "they're more concerned about public confidence in leadership." One board member leaned forward. "Trust takes years to build." He paused. "Sometimes only one decision to lose." The sentence sounded painfully familiar. Adrian realized he had heard some version of it nearly every day since Olivia left. When the meeting ended, Henry asked Adrian to stay behind. The conference room became quiet. Only the two men remained. Henry looked out the large windows before speaking. "My father started this company with 12 employees." Adrian listened. "He used to tell me something." Henry smiled sadly. People will forgive your mistakes much faster than they'll forgive your excuses. He turned toward Adrian. I've watched you build something extraordinary. Thank you. But, lately. He paused. I've watched you spend more energy explaining your decisions than accepting responsibility for them. Adrian lowered his head. I deserve that. Henry nodded. Yes. Another long silence. What are you going to do? Adrian answered honestly. I don't know. Henry smiled gently. Then, start there. Where? Stop pretending you have all the answers. Across town, Vanessa Reed sat inside a therapist's office for the first time in her life. She had postponed the appointment twice, nearly cancelled that morning. Now she sat nervously twisting a tissue between her fingers. The therapist smiled warmly. What brings you here today? Vanessa looked down. I helped destroy someone's marriage. The therapist didn't react with shock. Instead, she asked quietly, do you want to tell me how? For nearly an hour, Vanessa spoke without interruption, about loneliness, poor choices, financial desperation, the affair, the guilt. When she finished, she expected judgment. Instead, the therapist asked, what do you want your life to look like 5 years from now? Vanessa frowned. I've never thought that far ahead. Maybe it's time. That simple question became the first one that wasn't about her past. It was about her future. Saturday morning arrived with another neighborhood restoration project. This time, volunteers were building raised garden beds for a local senior center. Daniel was already measuring lumber when Olivia arrived. You beat me. He smiled. Only by 5 minutes. As they worked side by side, Mrs. Jenkins walked over carrying homemade cookies. I brought fuel. Daniel laughed. You spoil us. The elderly woman smiled knowingly. I've lived long enough to recognize something. Olivia looked up. What's that? People spend too much time looking for grand gestures. She handed each of them a cookie. What they really need. She looked directly at Daniel. Is someone who keeps showing up. Olivia quietly thought about Adrian. When they first married, he had always shown up. Friday dinners, weekend walks, long conversations. Over time, the meetings became longer. The business trips became more frequent. The phone never stopped ringing. She realized something painful. Their marriage hadn't ended the day he signed away the house. It had begun drifting long before that. Neither of them had noticed the distance until it became impossible to ignore. As volunteers cleaned up for the day, Daniel loaded the last stack of lumber into his truck. I have another question. Olivia smiled. You ask a lot of questions. I teach teenagers. It's become a habit. She laughed. Fair enough. He looked at her seriously. If you never hear another apology from Adrian. He paused. Do you think you'll still be okay? Olivia didn't answer immediately. She looked around the neighborhood. Families planting flowers. Children riding bicycles. Neighbors talking across fences. Life moving quietly forward. Finally, she smiled. She took a deep breath. I'm beginning to understand that my healing doesn't depend on his apology. Daniel nodded. It never did. She looked at him. It depends on what I choose next. As she spoke those words, her phone buzzed inside her pocket. It was Sophia Monroe. Olivia answered immediately. Hi, Sophia. Olivia. Her voice sounded unusually serious. I've just received something from Adrian's legal team. Olivia's expression changed. What is it? Sophia took a slow breath. He wants to settle. Olivia remained silent. But... Sophia continued. There's a condition. What condition? He wants to meet with you first. Olivia stared across the quiet neighborhood. The past she had been carefully learning to release had just knocked on her door again. Olivia ended the call with Sophia but didn't say a word. Daniel noticed immediately. You look like someone just handed you a decision you weren't ready to make. She slipped her phone back into her pocket. That's exactly what happened. Bad news? I don't know yet. They walked toward the parking lot together, the late afternoon sun stretching long shadows across the neighborhood. Finally, Olivia spoke. Adrian wants to settle. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. And? He wants to meet with me first. Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he unlocked his truck and leaned against the driver's door. What do you want? Olivia laughed quietly. I've noticed something about you. Oh? You never tell me what I should do. Daniel smiled. Because you're not looking for someone to make your decisions. He paused. You're looking for someone who reminds you that they're yours to make. Olivia smiled. That's a rare quality. My students would disagree. She laughed. But you're right. She looked toward the horizon. I'll think about it. Daniel nodded. Whatever you decide. He hesitated. Make sure it's for your peace. Not for his. Those words stayed with her long after they drove away. Across town, Adrian sat in the waiting room of a therapist's office. He almost left twice. The receptionist noticed him checking the time every few minutes. Nervous? Adrian smiled awkwardly. A little. Most people are. She handed him a bottle of water. It gets easier. He wasn't convinced. For 44 years, Adrian Bennett had solved problems by working harder, earning more, and staying busy. Talking about feelings wasn't something he knew how to do. The office door opened. A man in his late 50s smiled warmly. Mr. Bennett? Adrian stood. I'm Dr. Michael Reynolds. They shook hands. Come on in. The office was surprisingly simple. No expensive artwork, no intimidating desk. Just two comfortable chairs facing each other. Dr. Reynolds waited until Adrian sat down. So? He smiled kindly. What brings you here? Adrian looked around the room. I ruined my marriage. The therapist nodded. What happened? I had an affair. Silence. I lied. Another pause. I betrayed the person who trusted me most. Dr. Reynolds didn't interrupt. He simply listened. For nearly an hour, Adrian talked about the long workdays, the pressure of running $1 billion company, the emotional distance that had quietly grown between him and Olivia, meeting Vanessa, convincing himself it wasn't serious. The debt, the house, the lawsuit. When he finished, he looked exhausted. Dr. Reynolds leaned forward. Can I ask you something? Adrian nodded. When did you stop talking to your wife? Adrian frowned. We talked every day. No. The therapist smiled gently. You exchanged information. He paused. I'm asking when you stopped letting her know what was happening inside you. Adrian opened his mouth, then closed it again. He honestly couldn't remember. Dr. Reynolds reached for a notebook. I've noticed something. What? You've spent an hour explaining your decisions. Adrian nodded. Yes. But you've said almost nothing about your feelings before those decisions. He looked confused. I don't understand. The therapist smiled. Affairs rarely begin because someone wakes up wanting to betray their spouse. They usually begin because someone avoids difficult conversations. He wrote a single sentence on the notepad and turned it toward Adrian. What you refuse to face within yourself, you eventually force someone else to face because of you. Adrian read the sentence twice. It felt painfully accurate. Meanwhile, Olivia met Sophia Monroe at her office. So, Sophia began. Have you decided? Olivia looked out the window. I'll meet him. Sophia wasn't surprised. I thought you might. But there are conditions. Sophia picked up her pen. I'm listening. Public place. Agreed. No discussion about dropping the lawsuit. Sophia nodded. What else? If he wants forgiveness. She paused. He has to understand that's not something he can ask for. Sophia smiled. That's a healthy boundary. Olivia looked thoughtful. I don't want this meeting to reopen old wounds. No. Sophia agreed. You want it to help them close. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at a quiet coffee shop overlooking Lake Michigan. Neither Adrian nor Olivia chose the location. Sophia did. Neutral ground. No shared memories. No emotional advantage for either side. During the days leading up to the meeting, Adrian continued attending therapy. Each session uncovered something he had spent years ignoring. His fear of failure. His need to appear strong. His habit of solving problems alone instead of asking for help. One afternoon, Dr. Reynolds asked, What did success mean to you growing up? Adrian smiled faintly. My father used to say. He paused. A real man protects everyone around him. And how did you interpret that? I thought it meant I had to carry every burden by myself. The therapist nodded. And what happened when you couldn't? Adrian looked down. I hid the burden. Dr. Reynolds smiled sadly. Exactly. Across town, Daniel was grading history essays after school when one of his students knocked on the classroom door. Mr. Harper? Come in. The teenager hesitated. My parents are getting divorced. Daniel set his papers aside. I'm sorry. The student shrugged. They keep asking whose side I'm on. Daniel thought carefully before answering. Sometimes. He smiled gently. Life isn't about choosing sides. It's about choosing the kind of person you want to become despite what other people do. The student nodded slowly. Thanks. After the classroom emptied, Daniel sat quietly for several minutes. He found himself thinking about Olivia. He admired something about her. Despite everything Adrian had done, she wasn't trying to turn people against him. She simply wanted the truth acknowledged. That required remarkable strength. Thursday morning arrived. Adrian reached the coffee shop 20 minutes early. He chose a table near the window overlooking the lake. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He wasn't nervous about the lawsuit. He was nervous because he didn't know if Olivia would even walk through the door. At exactly 10 o'clock, she did. She wore a simple navy blue dress and carried no purse except a slim leather folder. She looked calm, composed, different. She noticed Adrian standing and politely nodded. "Good morning." "Morning." He pulled out the chair across from him. "Thank you for coming." She sat. "I came because I wanted clarity. Not reconciliation, not revenge. Clarity." A waitress approached. They ordered coffee. Neither touched it. For several moments, they simply looked at one another. Two people who had once known each other better than anyone else. Now separated by silence, regret, and one decision that could never be undone. Adrian finally spoke. "I don't know where to begin." Olivia answered quietly. "Then maybe." She folded her hands on the table. "Begin with the first truth you were too afraid to tell me." The conversation they had both avoided for months had finally begun. For several seconds, Adrian simply stared at the steam rising from his untouched coffee. Olivia had asked him a simple question. "Begin with the first truth you were too afraid to tell me." He had spent months rehearsing apologies, but not honesty. There was a difference. He slowly nodded. "The first truth," he drew a slow breath, "is that I was lonely." Olivia didn't interrupt. "I know that sounds strange." He gave a tired smile. "We lived in the same house. We ate dinner together. We traveled together. But somewhere along the way—" He looked down at his hands. "I stopped telling you when I was struggling." Olivia listened quietly. "You stopped asking for help." He looked up, surprised. "Yes." She nodded. "I noticed." "You did?" "I just didn't realize how serious it had become." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "When the company started growing, I felt responsible for everyone. Our employees, our investors, our clients." He smiled bitterly. "I thought carrying everything by myself made me a good leader. It didn't. It just made me unavailable." Olivia looked out toward the lake. "I wish you had told me." "So do I. I wasn't asking you to be perfect." She looked back at him. "I was asking you to let me be your partner." Those words hit Adrian harder than any accusation could have. He remembered all the evenings Olivia had asked, "How are you really doing?" How many times had he answered, "I'm fine." After a long silence, Adrian spoke again. "Then I met Vanessa." Olivia's expression remained calm. "I don't need every detail." "I know, but you deserve the truth." He folded his hands together. "It wasn't some grand romance. It wasn't because I loved her more. It happened because she only saw the version of me I wanted people to see. The successful businessman, the confident leader. She never saw the exhausted man who thought he was failing everyone." Olivia answered quietly, "Because you never let her." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "You never gave her the chance to know the real you." She paused. "You hid him from me too." The words settled between them. For the first time, Adrian realized the affair hadn't begun with another woman. The waitress quietly refilled their coffee cups. Neither of them noticed. Adrian continued, "When Vanessa told me about the debt, I panicked. I kept thinking, if I solve this quickly, no one gets hurt." Olivia gave a sad smile. "Except the one person you never asked." He nodded slowly. "I know." "No," she corrected gently. "I think you understand, now. But you didn't know then." He looked at her with confusion. "What's the difference?" "You believed you were protecting me." She sighed. "But protection without honesty isn't love. It's control." Adrian closed his eyes. Dr. Reynolds had said almost the same thing. Marcus had too. He was hearing the same lesson from every person who genuinely cared about him. Olivia looked out at the lake again. The hardest part wasn't losing the house. Adrian swallowed. "I know." "No." She looked back at him. "I don't think you do." She spoke calmly. "When I was a little girl, I stopped unpacking my boxes. You remember that story?" He nodded. "I do. I believed if I didn't unpack, I wouldn't be disappointed when it was time to leave again." She smiled sadly. "You changed that. I know. You gave me a key. You promised no one would ever take my home away." Tears filled Adrian's eyes. And then? She paused. The one person I trusted to protect that promise became the person who broke it. Her voice never rose. She never cried. That somehow made every word heavier. I've replayed that day hundreds of times, Adrian whispered. So have I. I would do anything to change it. Olivia nodded. I believe you. He looked surprised. You do? Yes. She smiled faintly. I also believe that if you could go back, you'd make a different choice. Hope flickered across Adrian's face. But, she continued gently, life only moves one direction. The hope faded. She wasn't being cruel. She was being honest. Adrian reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. I brought something. He placed a folded envelope on the table. What is it? My resignation. Olivia looked confused. I offered to step down as CEO. Her eyebrows lifted. You didn't have to. I know. I wanted the board to know. He looked down. That no position is worth more than accountability. Olivia studied him carefully. For the first time since arriving, she saw something different. Not desperation, not self-pity, humility, real humility. I've been seeing a therapist. She nodded. I heard. You did? Chicago is a small city. He laughed quietly. I suppose it is. I've learned something. What? I spent years believing leadership meant never letting people see weakness. He smiled sadly. It turns out, pretending you're never weak is exactly what makes people stop trusting you. Olivia smiled. That's an expensive lesson. It was. A gentle silence settled between them. Finally, Adrian looked directly into her eyes. I'm sorry. She remained quiet. I'm not asking you to come home. I'm not asking you to drop the lawsuit. I'm not asking for another chance. His voice trembled. I'm apologizing because I finally understand what I actually did. He paused. I didn't just betray my wife. I betrayed my best friend. Olivia lowered her eyes. Those words reached a place inside her that anger never could. She took a slow breath. I've spent months wondering if I failed you. Adrian immediately shook his head. No. I wondered if I worked too much. No. If I stopped listening. No. If I missed signs. He leaned forward. Olivia. His voice cracked. You are not responsible for the choices I made. She looked at him. You aren't responsible for my affair. You aren't responsible for my lies. You aren't responsible for that house. I am. Those words lifted a burden she hadn't realized she was still carrying. She hadn't been waiting for an apology. She had been waiting for responsibility. There was a difference. The coffee had gone cold. Neither of them cared. Outside, waves rolled gently against the shoreline. Life continued, just as it always had. Olivia slowly stood. So? Adrian asked quietly. What happens now? She smiled with kindness. Now? We let the court handle the business. He nodded. And us? A long silence followed. Finally, she answered. I forgive you. Adrian closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek. Before he could speak, Olivia continued. But forgiveness isn't permission to return to the life we had. He nodded slowly. I understand. I hope one day. She smiled gently. You become the man you were trying to convince everyone you already were. Then she picked up her folder. Goodbye, Adrian. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't follow her. He simply watched as she walked out of the coffee shop and disappeared into the bright Chicago afternoon. For the first time, he understood that forgiveness could be freely given, and still not change the ending. As Olivia stepped outside, she took a deep breath. The conversation hadn't erased the pain, but it had removed the weight she had been carrying. She wasn't walking away because she hated Adrian. She was walking toward a future that no longer depended on the man he used to be. Sometimes, accountability doesn't restore what was broken. It simply allows both people to stop living inside the moment it broke. 3 months later, the first cool breeze of autumn swept through downtown Chicago as people hurried toward the county courthouse. Unlike the dramatic courtroom scenes often shown on television, there were no crowds fighting for seats, no shouting attorneys, no surprise witnesses waiting in the hallway. Only 2 legal teams carrying neatly organized binders, 2 people whose lives had once been deeply intertwined, and a judge whose only responsibility was to determine what the evidence proved. Olivia arrived with Sophia Monroe nearly 30 minutes early. She wore a charcoal grey suit, her hair neatly pinned back, and carried a single leather folder. She looked calm, not because she wasn't nervous, because she had spent months preparing herself to let the facts speak louder than her emotions. Sophia noticed her quietly watching people enter the courthouse. "How are you feeling?" Olivia smiled faintly. "Peaceful." "Really?" She nodded. "I've realized something." "What?" "I don't need the courtroom to tell me who I am." Sophia smiled. "That's a good place to begin." Across the lobby, Adrian stepped out of the elevator with Marcus Ellis. He looked different. The expensive confidence that once seemed effortless had been replaced by something quieter, more thoughtful. Marcus adjusted his tie. "You ready?" Adrian gave a small laugh. "I don't think anyone is ever ready for a day like this." Marcus nodded. "Maybe not. But you're more honest today than you were 6 months ago." "I hope so." "It's obvious." As they walked toward courtroom 4 Billions, Adrian noticed Olivia standing near one of the large windows. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Neither smiled. Neither looked away. There was no hatred between them anymore. Only the quiet understanding that both of them had paid a price for one terrible decision. Adrian gave a respectful nod. Olivia returned it. Then both turned toward the courtroom doors. Judge Rebecca Morrison entered promptly at 9 o'clock. Everyone stood. The courtroom settled into silence. "This matter concerns a civil dispute regarding documented business contributions and related financial interests," the judge began. "This court is not here to decide the success or failure of a marriage." She looked around the room. "It is here to determine what the evidence supports." Olivia appreciated those words. For months, newspapers had reduced her life to headlines. The judge had already recognized something important. This case wasn't about revenge. It was about facts. Sophia delivered the opening statement. She spoke calmly, never raising her voice. "Your Honor, this case is not built on assumptions." She placed a stack of documents before the court. "It is built on records." She explained how Olivia had contributed strategic ideas, development plans, partnership introductions, and long-term community models that directly influenced Bennett Holdings' expansion. She displayed emails, meeting notes, investment presentations, calendar entries. Each document showed the same pattern. Olivia wasn't occasionally consulted. She was consistently involved. Sophia ended with a simple sentence. "Recognition delayed does not erase contribution." The courtroom remained quiet. Marcus stood next. He surprised almost everyone. He didn't attempt to dismiss Olivia's contributions. Instead, he acknowledged them. "Your Honor." He glanced briefly toward Adrian. "My client does not dispute that Mrs. Bennett made meaningful contributions during the early years of the company." Olivia looked at Sophia, slightly surprised. Marcus continued. "The disagreement concerns how those contributions should be legally valued." The tone of the hearing changed immediately. This wasn't a battle over whether Olivia mattered. It was a discussion about fairness, exactly what she had wanted from the beginning. During a short recess, reporters gathered outside the courtroom. Most expected dramatic arguments. Instead, they found two legal teams treating one another with professionalism and respect. One young journalist asked Sophia, "Is your client trying to destroy Mr. Bennett's company?" Sophia answered without hesitation, "No." "What does she want?" "The truth recognized." Another reporter approached Marcus. "Does Mr. Bennett regret what happened?" Marcus looked toward the courtroom doors before answering. "More than any headline could ever explain." Back inside, the court began reviewing evidence. A large screen displayed archived emails, one after another. The dates stretched back more than a decade. The judge occasionally paused to ask questions. "Who wrote this proposal?" "Mrs. Bennett." "And this development model?" "Mrs. Bennett." "And this recommendation that later became the company's logistics strategy?" "Also, Mrs. Bennett." Each answer strengthened the same conclusion. Olivia's fingerprints were everywhere, not on legal ownership documents, but on the ideas that helped the business grow. At one point, Sophia called an unexpected witness, Ryan Collins, Adrian's longtime business partner. Ryan walked to the witness stand and took the oath. Sophia smiled politely. "Senor Collins, how long have you worked with Mr. Bennett?" "Almost 15 years. "And during that time, did Mrs. Bennett participate in business discussions?" Ryan answered honestly. "Frequently." "Would you describe those discussions as casual conversations?" "No." "What would you call them?" He thought carefully. "Strategic planning." Sophia nodded. "Did the company benefit from her ideas?" Ryan smiled faintly. "More times than I can count." Marcus didn't object. He already knew the testimony was true. During cross-examination, Marcus asked only one question. "Senor Collins, did Mrs. Bennett ever demand ownership or compensation for those contributions while she and Mr. Bennett were married?" Ryan shook his head. "Never." Marcus nodded. No further questions. The answer mattered. Not because it weakened Olivia's case, but because it revealed her character. She hadn't helped Adrian expecting payment. She had helped because she believed they were building one life together. As the afternoon session continued, Adrian found himself looking toward Olivia more than once. Not out of regret. Out of admiration. She hadn't exaggerated. She hadn't lied. She hadn't tried to embarrass him publicly. She had simply trusted the evidence. It reminded him of the woman he fell in love with years earlier. Steady, thoughtful, grounded. He realized something painful. The qualities that made Olivia extraordinary had never disappeared. He had simply stopped appreciating them, while they were still his to cherish. Near the end of the day, Judge Morrison announced a recess until the following morning. The court has reviewed substantial evidence. She removed her glasses. I will continue hearing testimony tomorrow before issuing a decision. Everyone stood. As people slowly exited the courtroom, Adrian found himself walking only a few steps behind Olivia. For a moment, he considered saying something. Instead, he simply opened the courthouse door for her. She looked at him with quiet gratitude. Thank you. He nodded. You're welcome. No grand speeches. No emotional pleas. Just two ordinary words exchanged between two people who had finally learned that respect isn't proven by what we say when love is easy. It's proven by how we behave after we've broken it. As Olivia stepped into the crisp autumn air, she noticed Daniel waiting across the street beside a small coffee cart. He wasn't holding flowers. He wasn't trying to rescue her. He simply lifted a paper cup and smiled. I figured you might need coffee. Olivia laughed softly. You always seem to know exactly what I need. Daniel shrugged. I've learned that difficult days are easier when you don't face them hungry. She accepted the coffee, not because it solved anything, but because it reminded her that love isn't always found in extraordinary gestures. Sometimes, it's found in someone who simply keeps showing up. The second morning of the hearing felt quieter than the first. The reporters were still outside. The cameras were still waiting. But the excitement had faded. The story was no longer about scandal. It was about evidence. Inside courtroom 4 Billions, Judge Rebecca Morrison reviewed the final exhibits before looking toward both legal teams. Are there any additional witnesses? Sophia Monroe stood. No, Your Honor. Marcus Ellis rose next. No additional witnesses. The judge nodded. Very well. We'll proceed with closing arguments. Sophia approached the podium first. She looked at the judge, rather than the audience. Your Honor, my client has never argued that she built Bennett Holdings alone. She paused. She has consistently acknowledged Adrian Bennett's extraordinary vision, discipline, and work ethic. Olivia glanced toward Adrian. He lowered his eyes. Sophia continued. But partnerships are often built quietly. She held up one of Olivia's notebooks. Not every contribution appears on a paycheck. Not every valuable idea carries someone's name. She walked slowly before the judge. The evidence has shown a consistent pattern over more than a decade. Mrs. Bennett contributed strategic ideas, community development concepts, partnership opportunities, and planning recommendations that materially influenced the company's success. She closed the notebook. This case asks only one question. Should those contributions be acknowledged? She paused. We believe the answer is yes. Marcus Ellis stood. He didn't sound like a lawyer trying to defeat the other side. He sounded like a man trying to help the court reach the fairest outcome. Your Honor. My client accepts responsibility for many personal failures. He glanced briefly toward Adrian. He has already admitted that. Marcus folded his hands. The court has also seen clear evidence that Mrs. Bennett made meaningful contributions. He paused. Our position is simply that recognition should be proportionate to those contributions. The courtroom remained quiet. There were no dramatic objections, no shouting, just two attorneys helping the court understand the truth from different perspectives. Judge Morrison spent several minutes reviewing her notes. Then she looked toward Adrian. Mr. Bennett, he stood. I have one question. Yes, Your Honor. Having reviewed the evidence, she adjusted her glasses. Do you dispute that your wife significantly contributed to your company's development? The room became completely silent. Every reporter leaned forward. Adrian could have answered with legal language. He could have minimized, qualified, deflected. Instead, he looked directly at the judge. No. He turned toward Olivia. I don't. He swallowed hard. I should have acknowledged it years ago. Olivia lowered her eyes. Not because she was emotional, because hearing those words mattered more than she expected. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Thank you. She continued reviewing the documents before finally speaking. The evidence presented establishes that Mrs. Bennet made substantial, well-documented contributions to strategic planning, business development, and long-term growth initiatives during the formative years of Bennet Holdings. She paused. While the court cannot rewrite history, it can recognize documented facts. She outlined her decision carefully. Olivia would receive financial compensation reflecting the measurable value of her documented contributions. Additional ownership interests connected to specific jointly developed projects would also be recognized. The exact figures would remain confidential under the final settlement agreement. Neither side celebrated, because this had never truly been about numbers. After explaining the legal reasoning behind her decision, Judge Morrison looked at both parties. There is one final observation I'd like to make. Neither attorney objected. This courtroom exists to resolve legal disputes. She smiled gently. It cannot restore trust. It cannot repair marriages. It cannot return lost years. She folded her hands. But sometimes, it can remind people that truth has value. The courtroom remained silent. No one moved. Those words carried more weight than the judgment itself. Outside the courthouse, reporters quickly surrounded both legal teams. Sophia raised a hand. My client will not be making a lengthy statement. She looked toward Olivia. Olivia stepped forward. Microphones immediately filled the space between them. One reporter asked, Mrs. Bennet, do you feel like you won today? Olivia smiled politely. I don't think anyone wins when a marriage ends. Another reporter spoke. Do you feel vindicated? She shook her head. I feel heard. A third reporter asked, what would you say to people following your story? Olivia thought for a moment before answering. I'd tell them something I wish I'd learned much earlier. She looked directly into the cameras. Support the people you love. Celebrate their success. But never disappear inside someone else's dreams. The reporters quietly lowered their microphones. Her answer wasn't dramatic. It was honest. A few feet away, Adrian answered only one question. Mr. Bennet, a journalist called. Do you regret fighting the lawsuit? Adrian shook his head. No. The reporter looked surprised. You don't? I regret giving Olivia a reason to file it. There was nothing more to say. He walked toward his car, leaving the questions behind. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Ryan Collins caught up with Adrian. You okay? Adrian smiled faintly. I will be. Ryan nodded. The board met this morning. Adrian looked at him. They accepted your resignation. I figured. But... Ryan smiled. They also voted to name you special advisor during the leadership transition. Adrian looked genuinely surprised. They did? They believe you've earned the opportunity to rebuild trust. Ryan placed a hand on his shoulder. Not because of what happened, he paused, but because of how you've responded since. Adrian looked back at the courthouse. For the first time in months, he believed redemption might be possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. Across the street, Daniel waited exactly where Olivia had left him that morning. He wasn't holding flowers. He wasn't holding balloons. Just 2 cups of coffee. One black, one with cream, the way she liked it. She smiled. You remembered? I pay attention. He handed her the cup. So, how'd it go? Olivia looked toward the courthouse one last time. The court decided the business. Daniel nodded. And your heart? She smiled softly. That's been deciding itself for a while. They began walking toward the lake. Neither hurried. The autumn leaves drifted across the sidewalk around them. Daniel didn't ask about the settlement, or the headlines, or Adrian. Instead, he asked, what do you want to do tomorrow? Olivia laughed. Tomorrow? Yeah. He smiled. We've spent months talking about the past. What about tomorrow? She thought for a moment. I'd like to sleep in. He laughed. Reasonable. Then maybe volunteer. Also reasonable. And after that? She looked out across the lake. I think I'd like to start imagining a future again. Daniel smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. As they continued walking, Olivia realized something profound. The court had acknowledged her work. Adrian had accepted responsibility. Justice had been served. Now, life was quietly inviting her to begin again. Not by forgetting the past, but by refusing to let it become the only chapter that defined her story. The wind carried golden leaves across the sidewalk. She watched them dance before disappearing into the distance. Some seasons end because they're meant to, so that another one can finally begin. 6 months later, winter had settled over Chicago. The first snowfall covered rooftops, sidewalks, and tree branches with a quiet blanket of white. The city looked softer somehow, as if even the busiest streets had decided to slow down for a while. Life had changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, one ordinary day at a time. Olivia Carter Bennett was no longer living in Angela's guest room. 3 months earlier, she had rented a modest townhouse on a quiet street lined with maple trees. It wasn't nearly as large as the house she once shared with Adrian. There was no sweeping staircase, no grand foyer, no designer kitchen. Just 2 bedrooms, a small office, a cozy living room, and a front porch that caught the morning sun. Every month, she watered flowers in simple window boxes. She learned the names of her neighbors. She walked to the neighborhood bakery on Saturday mornings. For the first time in years, her life felt peaceful. Not perfect. Peaceful, and she had come to realize those weren't the same thing. Her architectural career had also taken an unexpected turn. After the lawsuit, several non-profit organizations reached out, asking if she would help design affordable housing and community spaces across Illinois. 1 project became 3. 3 became 7. Within months, Olivia founded her own architectural consulting firm. Its mission was simple: design neighborhoods where people could build lasting communities, not just expensive houses. When a reporter asked why she had turned down several luxury developments worth millions of dollars, Olivia smiled. Because success means very little if the work doesn't reflect your values. The quote spread quickly. Young architects began writing to her. Some thanked her for inspiring them. Others asked for career advice. Olivia answered as many letters as she could. She remembered what it felt like to need encouragement from someone who had already walked the path. Every Saturday morning, she still volunteered with a West Haven neighborhood restoration project. Some things didn't need improving. They simply needed protecting. Mrs. Jenkins still insisted on bringing homemade cookies. Mr. Ellis still complained that Daniel measured every board twice before cutting it. Daniel still laughed every time. The routine had become comforting, reliable, the kind of consistency that quietly rebuilds trust. One chilly Saturday afternoon, Daniel and Olivia finished installing bookshelves inside a newly renovated community center. Children immediately rushed over, filling the shelves with donated books. A little boy looked up at Olivia. "Did you build this place?" She smiled. "A lot of people built it." He thought for a second. "My teacher says teamwork makes things stronger." Daniel grinned. "Your teacher sounds pretty smart." The boy smiled proudly. "He is." After the children wandered away, Daniel turned toward Olivia. "You know." "What?" "I've noticed something." She raised an eyebrow. "You smile more now." She laughed softly. "Do I?" "You do. When did that happen?" She looked around the room before answering. "I think, She paused thoughtfully. "It happened when I stopped measuring my future by what I'd lost." Daniel nodded. "That's a healthy way to live." Across the city, Adrian Bennett was learning a different kind of success. After stepping down as CEO, he had accepted a reduced role as special advisor to Bennett Holdings. He no longer occupied the corner office. He no longer made every major decision. At first, the change bruised his pride. Then something unexpected happened. He slept better. He started leaving work before sunset. He attended therapy every Thursday without missing a session. He reconnected with his younger sister after years of letting work consume his life. He even began volunteering with a financial literacy program for young entrepreneurs, teaching them something he wished someone had taught him years earlier. At the end of one workshop, a college student asked, "Mr. Bennett, if you could give us one piece of business advice, what would it be?" Adrian smiled. "I'll give you 2. The room laughed. "First, never build a business so large that you forget the people who helped you build it." He paused. "And second," he looked around the room, "success without integrity is simply failure that arrives later." The students quietly wrote down every word. That evening, Adrian visited Dr. Reynolds for what would become one of their final therapy sessions. The therapist smiled as Adrian sat down. "You look different." "I feel different." "How?" Adrian thought carefully. "For the first time in my life. I'm not trying to convince anyone that I've got everything under control." "Dr." Reynolds smiled. "And how does that feel?" "Lighter." They both laughed. The therapist leaned forward. "What have you learned this year?" Adrian looked toward the window. "I used to think love meant protecting people from difficult truths." He smiled sadly. "Now I know love means trusting them enough to face those truths together." "Doctor," Reynolds nodded. A week before Christmas, Adrian received an invitation in the mail. It wasn't from Olivia. It was from the West Haven Neighborhood Restoration Project. Mrs. Jenkins had nominated him after hearing about his financial literacy workshops. The invitation read, Annual Community Volunteer Appreciation Dinner. Everyone was welcome. Adrian almost declined. Then he remembered something Dr. Reynolds had said. Growth often begins where pride ends. He decided to attend. The community center buzzed with conversation. Families filled folding tables decorated with handmade ornaments. Children laughed while decorating gingerbread cookies. Volunteers hugged one another like old friends. Adrian stepped inside quietly. No one stared. No one whispered. To most of the people there, he wasn't a billionaire. He was simply another volunteer. Across the room, Olivia noticed him. For a brief moment, their eyes met. She smiled politely. He returned the smile. Nothing more, nothing less. It was enough. Because sometimes respect survives, even when love cannot. A few minutes later, Daniel walked over carrying 3 paper cups of hot chocolate. He handed one to Olivia, then looked toward Adrian. After a brief hesitation, he walked over. "Mr. Bennett?" Adrian looked surprised. "Yes? I'm Daniel Harper." They shook hands. "I've heard about you." Adrian smiled faintly. "I imagine you've heard more than enough." Daniel chuckled. "Maybe." He handed Adrian the 3rd cup. "You looked cold." Adrian accepted it, genuinely touched. "Thank you." Daniel nodded. "Merry Christmas." As Daniel walked back toward Olivia, Adrian stood quietly holding the warm cup in his hands. He realized something important. The man standing across the room wasn't trying to replace him. He wasn't competing with him. He was simply treating another human being with kindness. And, somehow, that lesson was worth more than every business seminar Adrian had ever attended. Spring arrived quietly. The snow melted from the sidewalks. The maple trees that had stood bare all winter slowly filled with fresh green leaves. It had been almost a year since Olivia had stood outside the house she thought would be her forever home and watched strangers change the locks. Sometimes, she still thought about that day. Not with anger, not even with sadness, just gratitude that she had survived it. Life had taught her something unexpected. The worst day of your life doesn't have to become the definition of your life. On a bright Saturday morning, Olivia parked in front of a newly built brick home in a peaceful neighborhood on the north side of Chicago. Daniel stepped out of his pickup truck, carrying a toolbox. He looked around with a smile. "So?" She laughed. "So, this is it?" She nodded. "It is." Unlike the grand house Adrian had once given her, this one was modest. 3 bedrooms, a small front porch with 2 rocking chairs, a backyard just large enough for a vegetable garden, and an old oak tree. No marble staircase, no luxury gate, no dramatic entrance. Everything about it reflected the woman Olivia had become. Intentional, comfortable, honest. Daniel looked at her. "Nervous?" "A little." "Why?" She smiled. "The last time someone handed me a house." She paused. "I believed it guaranteed my future." Daniel nodded quietly. "And now?" She reached into her handbag and pulled out a simple silver key. "This time, she smiled. "I'm the one unlocking the door." She slipped the key into the lock, turned it. The front door opened with a soft click. Sunlight poured through the windows, filling the empty rooms with warmth. Olivia stood silently in the doorway. Daniel didn't rush her. He simply waited. Finally, she stepped inside. The hardwood floors echoed beneath her footsteps. Fresh paint carried the clean scent of a new beginning. She walked slowly from room to room, not inspecting the house, imagining a life. A dining table where friends would gather. Bookshelves filled with stories. A small office where she would design neighborhoods for families she'd never meet. A porch where she could drink coffee while watching the sunrise. She smiled, not because the house was perfect, because she finally understood something. Peace isn't found in square footage. It's found in knowing you've built your life on truth. Daniel set the toolbox down near the kitchen. "I brought a housewarming gift." "Oh?" He reached into the truck and carried in a small wooden birdhouse. It had been painted white with blue trim. On the front, hand-carved in neat letters, were the words, "Welcome home." Olivia traced the carved letters with her fingertips. "You made this?" Daniel smiled. "My students helped." She looked up. "It's beautiful. I remembered something you once told me." "What was that?" "That homes aren't measured by price." She laughed softly. "I did say that." "So?" He pointed toward the backyard. "I figured every home should have a few birds arguing over whose turn it is to sing." She laughed harder than she had in weeks. "I think you're right." Together, they hung the birdhouse on the old oak tree. Within minutes, a curious sparrow landed on the roof before flying away again. Daniel smiled. "First visitor." Olivia looked toward the tree. I hope many more come. Several weeks later, West Haven held the grand opening for its largest neighborhood redevelopment project. Families gathered beneath colorful banners. Children ran across a brand new playground. Community leaders thanked volunteers. Mrs. Jenkins insisted everyone eat 2 slices of pie. She claimed 1 slice wasn't enough for people who had worked so hard. The crowd laughed. Olivia stood beside Daniel near the edge of the celebration. This neighborhood looks completely different. He nodded. So do you. She looked at him. In a good way? The best way. What changed? Daniel smiled. You stopped surviving. He paused. And started living. Those words settled gently into her heart. He was right. For months after leaving Adrian, every day had felt like an exercise in endurance. Now, she was making plans again, dreaming again, laughing again. Not far away, Adrian quietly watched from the back of the crowd. He had become a regular volunteer over the past several months. Most people no longer recognized him as the billionaire from the headlines. They knew him as the man who always arrived early to carry lumber, clean paintbrushes, and stay late sweeping floors. Mrs. Jenkins spotted him. There you are. She handed him a slice of pie. You've earned this. He smiled. Thank you. She looked toward Olivia. You know. She seems happy. Adrian followed her gaze. Olivia was laughing with Daniel as children chased bubbles across the grass. He smiled. She does. Mrs. Jenkins studied him. Does that hurt? He thought for a long moment before answering. It used to. And now? He looked toward the families enjoying the park. Now I'm just grateful she found peace. Mrs. Jenkins nodded. That's how I know you're healing. As the afternoon came to an end, volunteers folded tables and packed away decorations. Daniel walked Olivia to her car. He seemed unusually quiet. What are you thinking about? She asked. He smiled nervously. Can I ask you one more question? She laughed. You really are a teacher. I can't help it. Go ahead. He reached into his jacket pocket. Not for a ring. For a folded piece of paper. What is this? A list. She unfolded it. At the top, it read, Things I hope we do someday. Below it were simple ideas. Take the train to Boston in the fall. Plant tomatoes in the backyard. Read 1 book together every month. Volunteer in every neighborhood project until we're too old to hold a hammer. Watch the sunrise over Lake Michigan at least once every summer. Olivia smiled through tears. There isn't a single expensive thing on this list. Daniel shook his head. The best parts of life usually aren't. She folded the paper carefully. I'd like to do every one of these. His smile widened. Good. Because I was hoping you'd say that. He gently reached for her hand. This time, she didn't hesitate. Later that evening, Adrian returned to his apartment. The place was quiet, simple, smaller than the homes he once owned. He sat beside the window overlooking the city and opened an old wooden box. Inside lay 2 things he had kept all year. The brass key to the house he had once given Olivia, and her wedding ring. He looked at them for a long time, then quietly stood, walked to his desk, opened a drawer, placed both items inside. Closed the drawer, not to forget, but to stop living there. He smiled faintly. Some memories deserve respect. They just don't deserve control over the rest of your life. Months later, Olivia sat on the front porch of her new home with a cup of coffee. The birdhouse Daniel had built was now home to a family of bluebirds. The garden was beginning to bloom. Children rode bicycles past the house. Daniel stepped onto the porch carrying 2 mugs. You ready? She smiled. For what? He pointed toward the truck. The community center called. They're starting another neighborhood. She laughed. Looks like we have work to do. She stood, locked the front door, and slipped the key into her pocket. This time, she didn't hold the key because someone had given it to her. She held it because she had earned it. Together, they walked toward the truck as the morning sun rose over the neighborhood. Behind them, the little house stood quietly beneath the old oak tree. It wasn't the biggest house on the street. It wasn't the most expensive. But it was filled with something far more valuable than wealth. Honesty, respect, hope, and 2 people who understood that a home isn't built the day you receive the keys. A home is built every single day you choose one another. Final reflection. Life has a way of teaching lessons we never volunteer to learn. Adrian discovered that success means very little if it costs the trust of the people who matter most. Olivia learned that losing a home doesn't mean losing yourself. Daniel reminded us that genuine love rarely arrives with grand promises. It arrives through consistency, patience, and quiet acts of kindness. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this. Every major turning point begins with one ordinary choice. One conversation, one signature, one apology, one decision to tell the truth, or one decision to remain silent. Choose wisely. Because the life you're living tomorrow is often built by the small decisions you make today. Thank you for spending your time with us on Love Stories by Mr. Johnson. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what was the biggest life lesson you took away from Olivia and Adrian's journey? Until next time, take care of your heart, tell the truth while you still can, and never forget that the strongest homes are built not with money, but with love, trust, and the courage to choose each other every single day. What a journey this has been. Before you go, we'd love to hear from you. What was the biggest life lesson you learned from Olivia, Adrian, and Daniel's story? Was Adrian truly redeemed after accepting responsibility? Did Olivia make the right choice by choosing peace over a second chance? And do you believe forgiveness always requires reconciliation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read your comments, and your perspective could encourage someone who's facing a difficult season in their own life. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another inspiring American love story filled with meaningful life lessons. And if you know someone who needs a reminder that trust is earned, forgiveness is a choice, and one decision can change a lifetime, share this story with them. Until next time, remember, the strongest homes aren't built with money. They're built with honesty, respect, and two people who choose each other every single day. God bless you, and we'll see you in the next story.